Okay, good evening. It's 6:06 PM and I'm calling the Groton Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting to order for October 21st, 2024. First order of business is review the October 15th meeting minutes. Does anyone have any? Or do you just don't want to move, accept? And we can discuss.
I'll move to accept the minutes, October 15th.
Second? Second. Okay, and any discussion?
I had something.
Mhm.
Just the policy committee referral that I made for 131 and 1312, oh sorry, 1312 and 1312.4
Mhm.
regarding public and anonymous complaint process and procedure. I think I don't know, I didn't get a chance to review the tape, but what I meant to say was policy and procedure.
Okay,
But not process and procedure are kind of the same thing.
okay.
So.
All right, so I'll make sure that that's
There were a couple of
Where is
typos
that? I can show it.
elsewhere in the document,
policy and procedure.
but I can send those in an email.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of accepting the minutes, subject to the amendment? Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. So this evening, we have the pleasure of reviewing the Thames River and Mystic River Magnet Schools data, action plans, and intervention support. So welcome. Thank you. You want to?
I'd like to, I think you all know, but I'd like to introduce Jamie Giordano, who's the Thames River Magnet School principal, and Steve Wheeler, who is the Mystic River Magnet School principal, and Paul, who is the assistant principal at Padua, who's from Mystic River. So we can get started. I know Lauren Cassini is online. I can see that she's on there too.
Hi, guys.
I guess we have to put the presentation up. So did you want to start at all? Or do you want to wait and we'll put the presentation up? I know one of the things while Anne Marie's getting that is I've got a special education overview, and I might let Denise just say a few words about their schools and how impacted they are with special education. This is something that we did last year for the budget, and we'll put it in the budget book. We won't spend as much time because you're much more aware, but we have it for each of the schools. We have it for special education and we have it for central office. And Denise got out of the gate and really updated hers right away. So she did due diligence with this one.
Thank you, Susan. So while Anne Marie's getting that ready, just to let you know, I'm here accompanying Mr. Wheeler and Mrs. Giordano because they are the largest
These for the
elementary schools in the district,
project.
and they do have the highest percentage of students with special needs in their buildings. So on the overview, you can see that we do have 6 integrated preschool classrooms, and 3 are in Thames River and 3 are in Mystic River. So they are housed in these 2 schools. We also have 11 intensive learning classrooms. 4 are located in Mystic River. So Mr. Wheeler has 4 classrooms that work with students primarily who have moderate to severe autism and developmental delays. We have 7 social emotional behavioral academy classrooms. 2 are in Mrs. Giordano's school, the K1 and the 2-3. So you can see right there, both schools have a number of specialized programs that definitely impacts the building on a day-to-day basis. Some of the other bullet points are not new, but you can see our staff has changed a little bit from last year. We have 119.6 certified staff members, and we have 10.8 contracted staff members. You'll see at the bottom, we have an increase in paraprofessionals, and that is due to the elimination of the tutors. So those tutor positions were converted to paraprofessional positions. And that accounts for the increase in paras. And lastly, we're very excited. We've launched our registered behavior therapist position. This is a new position that we negotiated with the paraeducator union last year. Mr. Wheeler has 5 of them in his building because he has the autism classrooms in his building. And then we have 2 at the middle school, 2 at the high school, one here at the Transition Academy, and 1 at Catherine Kolnaski. So we're really excited. These are highly trained paraeducators that are work closely with our board certified behavior analysts and really help drive instruction, collect data, and plan interventions. Our percentage has gone up from 19% to 20%. So the percentage of students district-wide, this also includes our students who are at magnet schools and our students who are at the Ledyard VOAG, Friendship School, and the Isaac Charter School, and as well as students placed out of district. So the 821 students is all of the students we're responsible for through the district. And that is an increase from 19% last year to 20% this year. Similarly, underneath, the state incident or the state prevalence rate went from 16.7% of the student population in Connecticut having an IEP to 17.1%. So this is a number that we see increase each year. And that is why each year we need more staff and we need highly trained staff because the needs of the students are ever changing and some of them are quite intense. But to get back to Mystic River and Thames, they do a fabulous job with their specialized programs and managing the adults in the building. They're busy, joyful buildings that you will learn a lot about tonight. Are there any questions?
So this is the all schools, correct?
Ian?
Yeah, just curious to know, will we see a special education breakdown per school, per site?
Oh, we did not prepare that for last year, so we don't have that prepared this evening.
Is that something we could see throughout the
I
budget
think
process?
Buildings update theirs, you're gonna see it on each of their schools.
Okay, I think it'd be
See
good.
all their
to-
staffing, we put everything except utilities last year, and I said to Irene, I don't know if we'll do that, but I'd love for our community to know what it costs in special education, what are the complexities, what does it look like at central office, and what does it look like at every school? I think it's a good visual for the community to understand us better.
Thank you.
Just one other thing, this is great, chief, I would personally love to see this type of thing, in the agenda or as an attachment or something, so we could review ahead of time.
Oh, absolutely. We were a little late getting it together for the meeting this evening, so it didn't go out with Friday's packet, but we can send it out this coming Friday in the packet.
So the increasing trend in
Can you pull
special,
up your
oh,
thing and speak?
so the increasing trend in special education, maybe we can talk about it later, maybe it's in your presentation. Is that a trend like in the state and nationally, or is
Yes.
it just to our district or like our section of Connecticut?
No, the state prevalence rate went from 16.7% to 17.1%, so it is an increase across the state as well as locally.
Okay, but we're at 19 going on 20, so we do have like a slightly higher rate. Okay.
Yeah, we have students that come to our district with an IEP because they're military or they're moving to Groton for housing. And we oftentimes, we have to accept those students with their IEPs. They're not all students that we identified, but they're students that come to our district that we work with and we assume responsibility for their IEP.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah, Ray, I think
Mhm.
question,
Yep.
could we, we come, I know we're gonna be doing this for the next few weeks. Can we come back to this after you've had some time to review?
Sure, we can put it back on the agenda.
This is just a little preview, but we will be talking more about it. Just to set the stage, because these two buildings are quite unique. They're new, they're big, and they have probably the most needs with special education and other things. So we just wanted to set the stage a little bit.
Also, just moving forward too, as we look at the sites and the schools individually, and we're ramping up towards budget season, I think, just from my own 2 cents, I think it'd be good to have, like, when we do the school site breakdowns, to have it kind of broken out with the function code, object code in miniature for that site. Parallel to the way we look at the budget.
Don't know we could fit it on one page, but we could.
No, it wouldn't be.
Certainly
Yeah.
could add. I'll look at that with Irene to see what can be done.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Welcome.
I did want to, I'm Steve Will, principal at Mystic River Magnet School. I did want to quickly respond to Jen's statement about the special ed population increasing. I whispered to Jamie when I was listening to your question, we pay very close attention to enrollment numbers. I feel like they don't stop. You get this big, massive surge at the end of August. And even through September, but they just keep coming in.
Yeah, and coming and going, but more
Yeah.
coming than going.
We've started to notice that at Mystic River that we are starting to see an influx that we hadn't seen before. But to your point, Jen, we are paying close attention to these students that are moving in. And this is the first question we ask. We are getting a lot of students that are moving in that are special ed. So I'm not sure why, it's just how it's working and it's just us processing through if it's an ABA student or it's a resource student or something. But it would be a neat, I don't want to say study, but it would be interesting to follow and track that.
Yeah.
With kids that are moving into district. But I really like this page here, this slide. It really helps to kind of set the stage for when we look at scores. This really has helped the administrators in my building and our staff to really truly dig deep and understand who are the students in front of us. But this was based on our scores from last year's testing. We had 545 students enrolled. Denise kind of already, went through the special programming, but this is unique to our school. We do have preschool classrooms. We have 3. There's AM and PM classes. We also have a pre-kindergarten classroom, and that is in AM and PM sessions as well. This year, we do have a transitional kindergarten. There's 1 classroom there. And then Denise did talk about the autism program. That does include 4 classrooms of students K through 5. And we do, I always call it a 5th classroom. We do have a preschool classroom that has students that are fitting this profile as well. So we do house this for the district. It is very, very busy. The students in these programs have a lot of significant needs. And as a result of that, we have upwards of 52 paraprofessional positions in our building. So it's just something to really wrap your head around when you look at wheels and cogs of how the day operates. Our student makeup, our percentages at Mystic River, we have probably the highest numbers in the district or fairly close to it. When you're talking percentages of students in buildings. So when our students tested last year, 282 of our students, 52% was free and reduced lunch eligible. 32% were special education students. That's 173 students. Keep in mind, a good portion of those can be found in our preschool program and our AGA programs. The EL population, our limited English proficiency, we had 43 students last year. I was checking numbers already this year. We're up to roughly 32, 33 students. We had another family just move in this week from Ecuador. So there's 3 more students that are coming our way. So I feel like this is one of those numbers where we start out what I feel to be low, but then we end up gaining kids as we go. But 43 students, we have the largest EL population of any building in the district. So those are just some of the demographics of who we are. Like I said, it really helps us as a building to understand the needs of our students and help to find where the programming needs to be and how those supports need to be relayed to students. The chronic absenteeism, this is a.
Steve,
Oh, yeah, sure.
could I just pause you for just a moment? Because Matthew and Bev already have some questions. Matthew and then Bev.
I'll wait until the presentation's over.
Can you do the page?
Okay.
Can then finish the page and then we can go back to the
All right.
question.
Bev, did you have something now or did you want to wait until the
I-
page?
Now, I can ask my question now. The autism program with the 5 classrooms, including the 1 preschool, how many students are you talking about in each of those classrooms? Do you know?
Yeah, so the classrooms, the 4 classrooms that have K through 5 students in them, we're roughly anywhere between 9 and 10 students in each of those classrooms. The preschool classroom is very low now, but as Denise can attest, it will get more students enrolled. So we're roughly between 3 and 4 in that classroom, AM, PM.
In each one.
Well, just the 1 preschool, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in each
combined
one.
for AM, PM.
And 8 and 9 is a huge amount. I mean, we had a situation like that at the middle school, Beverly, where it became like almost a dozen and we had to get another teacher because it's too many children who have that level of significant needs. We have children with autism on the spectrum all throughout our district. These are kids with significant needs in autism and really needing, one-on-one para support. And so you add the 8 kids and maybe 6 paras, an RBT, and a teacher. That's a lot of people in those small rooms.
Did you say they go to school AM and PM, or they go to school all day?
It's all day, Beverly, for the students in K through 5. The preschool ABA classroom, they are AM, PM.
Okay,
They're
thank you.
half day preschool.
All right, I'm going to recognize Adrian.
All right, well, thank you, Susan. You answered half of my question, which is how many adults are in the classroom? So I guess a lot of those kids, or a large percentage, will have one-on-ones. And how many teachers? Is it one regular or one special ed teacher? And then is there any other, aides or help in that classroom besides the 1 teacher?
No, so there's one, there's one special ed teacher that's in the room, and then I think you're kind of on the money with most of them are one-to-ones, but we do have a shared para model where there are certain students that can be grouped and they can be worked, in a small group with one paraprofessional. We do have district BCBAs that are also here. This year, we have one full-time with us, Adrian, that focuses on behaviors, and they're rotating through the classrooms.
And they also each have an RBT, a registered behavior tech. We have a speech path dedicated just to that program, as well as OT and certified occupational therapy assistant.
And it's such an intense program that sometimes these dedicated teachers have forgone lunch in their planning. So we do have a special ed substitute who's able to relieve them so that they absolutely, by contract, get their lunch and their planning. And so that's another teacher type that shares all of those classrooms though. So she's an extra person that splits
Sure,
the
it's an
duties.
incredibly demanding job
Yes,
for that
it is.
teacher.
It
and
is.
We appreciate them.
And they're totally dedicated. These people have been with us for a long time.
Well, it is, and they, they are, as you can imagine, they're dealing with students who are, nonverbal. There are students that are very aggressive and physical. And yes, they are probably some of the most optimistic teachers in the building. So they do, we are very fortunate to have the staff that we have in those rooms, because they approach every day as a clean slate. And they do an amazing job. They do.
And then one more follow-up to your comment. Shared paras, that's a newer thing, correct, that we're doing in the district?
Yeah, so in this program in particular, I don't know, I don't want to step on Denise if you want to answer as well. I think it's dependent upon the student's needs. We do have students that really absolutely require a lot. There might be students that are more, higher functioning, and they can be working with, an additional student or 2 with a para or the teacher in the classroom, and it works. I'm not going to say that happens a lot, but it is something that we're looking at doing. That's the goal, yeah.
Build independence.
Yeah.
That's our goal, to build,
All right.
build
I
independence.
think we do sometimes often see struggles when they're socially out in the building. So if you've got one paraprofessional and they're working with 3 students or 2 students, they get into a lunch setting or something like that. I feel like that's when the supports kind of, we look at making sure that they're grouped together so that if extra supports are needed, they're there to help each other.
All right, well, I appreciate that. And that seems like there's a whole discussion there too. So maybe we can kind of go back to that when we're talking about the specialist portion of the presentation.
Beverly, did you have another question?
Oh, yes, I do, Jay. The paras, do they get any kind of special training to work with the autistic students?
They do. They receive training from our BCBAs. They also receive training from the special education teachers, the speech pathologist, in terms of many of them have iPads that they use as talkers with special apps that they scroll through, that have visual icons for what it is they want to say, preferred vocabulary. And then on November 5th, they have a full day PD, and they're working with our Learn staff to become more comfortable with behavior and instructional strategies for half of the day. And they're going to be working with Chris Raitt and her partner on some restorative strategies the second half of the day.
So these paras, you would say, specialize in autism.
The ones in these classrooms definitely do. And when we posted for the registered behavior therapist, many of the candidates that interviewed and were hired were from within the program. And some of them are actually going back to school to get certification to be teachers.
And the RBT also comes with a training course. So that once we've hired, some of them have already taken the course, I have to tell you, on their own, but we will provide the coursework for them. And I guess the time and then there is that funding, when you negotiated, that came with a funding that was above the para rate, the typical para educator rate.
Okay, one more question. It has to do with absenteeism. Mr. Wheeler, I see that you're doing very well with absenteeism. It decreased a lot. Do you know, even the 17.2%, do you know the reason why most of your students are absent? And how does that correlate with teacher absenteeism in your school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe these numbers are probably trending across the district, but very proud of that. A lot of hard work. I feel like some of the conversations, Bev, that we're having with families, we do have students that are on the other side of town, meeting almost close by Jamie's building. If those students miss buses or something comes up in their family, they don't come to school. There's been many times that kids have gotten sick. And those students have to be picked up, and we've had to, pay for rides for them to come and get their children. So I feel like transportation is definitely an issue, but I do feel like it is a constant conversation with some of our families to talk about the importance of making sure their students are on the bus and they're ready to go. We've had one of the things we spent a lot of time on with our chronic absenteeism population is meetings with families, getting families to come in, having very frequent conversations, not just a meeting, but we're following up with phone calls. We send letters home. We also try very hard to get our families to get linked up to resources in their community that will help them as well, whether it be support at the house that they need, in order to really understand the importance of their students coming in.
And what about your teacher absenteeism? How's that?
Actually, we were just talking about that today. Our certified teaching population, our absenteeism is good. I share
Not
this.
good. It's better.
It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. We share this with Susan an awful lot. We often struggle with our support staff. We have, like I said, upwards of 50, 51, 52 paraprofessionals, and that can often be a struggle on any given day when you've got 8 to 10 of them that are not in the building, because then we have to look to cover those. But our certified staff, I feel like the attendance for them has been really good this year and last year too.
Thank you.
Ian?
Just a quick follow-up on that. You're speaking about students that were from, the other side of town. And I'm curious to know, overall, like what percent of your students are coming from, outside the attendance zone? And, which zone has the largest percentage that is not your natural attendance zone?
Yeah, that is our zone. So we actually have, when you look at how our, demographic has been laid out in terms of our school zone, we have, all of the students that live in Quantic Bridge come to our building, and then we have half of Branford Banner that come, and it was just the way that our.
Well,
our
Claude
plan was
Chester
laid
came
out.
together with SB Butler.
Exactly. Claude
But
Chester.
over the time with lottery, that would be an interesting thing to come back to you. And we're still working on that map. I've talked to Irene, so we've got to quote Lawrence on here. So I think that would be really an interesting topic to look at the children that are zoned in that school versus the ones, and like you said, they were zoned, specifically to bring the kids who had been in Claude Chester staying together with the
Mhm.
kids who had been in SB Butler staying together with their peers and coming to the new school.
Right, thank you. As far as the EL students, out of the 43 or so, how many how much of a crossover is there between the EL students and being classified as special ed as well?
I was just gonna say, I don't have that number in front of me, but it is very small. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would be interested in that number all the same.
Well, students need to have exposure to the English language in an instructional setting for a certain period of time before they're referred for special education. We also use the Lost Links, the language assessment scale, to assess their English language proficiency. And
Mhm.
that has an impact on whether or not they're referred, because if they're really not proficient in English yet, then we can't determine that they have a disability. We have to work more on their English acquisition.
Right, and as of this time, there's no determination, there's no testing that's available in languages other than English.
Oh, there is.
And-
Spanish, we have Spanish.
Okay,
Yeah, the Woodcock Johnson and the Whisk is available in Spanish.
all right, and that helps out?
Yeah, we have a bilingual evaluator that we contract with in cases where we have a student that has to be assessed in their native language.
And his school is one of the bilingual schools.
Yeah.
Mystic River, Groton Middle, and Fitch are all considered bilingual schools because of the number of Spanish-speaking children.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, let me keep going.
Keep
Hey,
going.
hey, Jay, I have another question. If
Okay,
you don't
go.
mind.
I don't think-
okay.
Did you?
Mr. Wheeler, what's the breakdown of the EL students? What languages do they mostly speak? And how long does it take for an EL student to become proficient? If you have a range, how long does it take for an EL student to become proficient in English? Does it take a year, 2 years, 3 years? Just, generally speaking.
Yeah, I think it really that depends on who the student is. For example, we just had a family move in and none of the students speak English. So, we will see as long as there's, if the students are available to learn, we will see a huge jump between the first year. We will see, kids become very proficient in the language. We have others that we're keeping track in our intervention process too, to make sure that we aren't missing something. And this is part of my presentation for later on in my plan, is that all of our EL students are receiving remedial reading services in addition to receiving their EL service with our EL tutors and teacher. So that was something that we really needed to make sure was consistently approached. And that was something that we were really digging very deep into the scores for. But I would say too, to answer your first part of that, primarily the students are speaking Spanish. We do have a few folks, a few families that moved in. One of them is Vietnamese and another is Chinese. Speaking Chinese. Dialect of.
So Matthew's been patiently waiting till you finished your presentation on this page. So I'm going to recognize Matthew now.
Thank you, Jay. I wanted to ask something before we moved into the analysis of the Smarter Balance performance My understanding last year, I'm just looking at the Mystic River ELA student count 175, but I'm not speaking about this data, I'm just the process. I've never clearly understood, or actually I believe I do, I'm not sure I understand why, that count of 175 includes most, perhaps not all, but most of the IEP students. I guess a yes, no question, is my understanding correct?
I don't understand it.
I
I
don't-
don't understand the question.
It does.
Okay, on the unnumbered page, and please in the future, guys, please number the pages. It's really helpful. Under the first page with the Smarter Balance Performance Statistics, the first box on top says ELA, student count 175. That's our universe in this.
I thought we were back on this page.
I didn't know we were going.
I thought
It's the next
We
slide.
haven't gotten there.
I want to make a point so that when you get to that, you can take my point into account and give you a
Okay.
chance to think about it first. It says student count 175. It would be very helpful to know, out of those 175, how many are IEP students dealing with different issues and how many of them are main track students. The reason being, I know the state requires you to put that data this way. I know the state requires you to give the exams in a particular way, but it would be helpful for us to know how we're doing with our students who are not IEP students by teasing out those who are not IEP, or conversely teasing out those who are so-called main track. So when you get to those charts, would you see if you can help elucidate that? Thank you.
Yeah, so Matthew, I think I can give you that data now. So on October 1st, 2023, the percentage of students in grades 3 through 5 that had an IEP at Mystic River was 26%.
Is
doesn't
that,
mean that-
is that 26% included in the 175?
No, Mr. Wheeler was giving you data for K through preschool through grade 5. This is just grades 3 through 5. 26% of the students had an IEP.
Okay,
I'm grabbing
Thank
that information for you right now. I can give you those exact numbers.
okay. Fine. So, and that count there for the ELA grades 3, for example, it says count 67. So it would be interesting to know, because it shows that 58% are not meeting standards, but if a relatively large percentage of those are IEP, for whom our main goal is to keep making progress, because we know they're impacted by their disabilities, how are we doing with those who do not have such disabilities? How can we measure our success with those who are not, specifically not having disabilities? Because it's a different standard. Anyway, when you get to that, I would hope you can figure out a way to help me understand it. Thank you so much.
You want to start here with the? So this should look familiar.
Yeah, it should. Yep, this is the achievement levels that Smarter Balance, the Smarter Balance assessment uses to obviously, show where students are falling when they take this assessment. So if a student is achieving a level 3, they're meeting the benchmark, and if they're achieving a level 4, they're exceeding the benchmark. Level 2 is approaching, and then level 1 is they're not meeting the benchmark standard. I think I know Lauren's on as well, but Matthew, I'm hoping this is going to help you when you look at drilling down into the data. That's what our building data team does. But this number that you're seeing for ELA across grades 3, 4, 5, it was 175 students that took the assessment for ELA. When we look at how it gets broken down by demographics of students that are taking it, and Lauren, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is Lauren's data. The special ed students that took the assessment out of that 175 was 43, and the EL students, the English language learners, there were 23 students.
That is
Right.
accurate. Yes.
I think that's what Matthew was asking for. So, I don't know if this answers his question or not. But we have spent an awful lot of time on both sides of that spectrum, meaning that we look at those kids that are in the red and the yellow, and we are trying to disseminate, why are they there? Who are these students? What supports are they currently receiving? And what else can we do for them? We've spent an awful lot of time in the middle here in the yellow, really looking at who are these students that are approaching standards. We will then take that population and we've looked at targeting them for specific instructional interventions. How close are they to meeting the standard? There's such a band there, they're going to fall somewhere in it. But to Matthew's point, we then do look at students that are meeting the standard and exceeding it. Because we want students to still continue to grow in those bands, not just stay where they are. So we do take a close look at that, and we look at our tier 1 instruction. This year, we've obviously have been implementing Wit and Wisdom in a good 30 minutes every day is met with what we call our win block, which is what kids need. And that is a time that teachers are meeting in small group, and they are differentiating instruction based on students' needs.
I'm going to recognize Jen and then Bev.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting your presentation. But as a request going forward, I do agree with Matthew that when these are presented going forward for the other schools, that we separate the special education students from the non-needs versus the needs students, so that, because as Lauren mentioned when she was here last week, was that those individuals are getting assessed at the standard level and not based on their IPD levels. So it's not fair. It would intentionally, it would skew down the results because they're not being benchmarked to where they're supposed to be performing at. So yes, let's split the data so that the students who don't need the extra help, we can see and assess as a district how those students are doing. And then separately, we can assess if we are meeting the needs of our special education students. So right now, with it being mixed, us looking at this data, we can't tell if we're meeting either of the population's needs.
So Lauren, I would ask you to chime in. There is a cohort of high needs students, and it is not just special education students. I believe it's also EL and free and reduced lunch. Is that correct, Lauren?
Yes. Yep.
So we don't split out any one particular group. They're in the same cohort as a high needs cohort.
Okay, then let's do the high needs cohort versus the non-high needs cohort. And if we have to understand that the high needs cohort includes special ed, English as a second language, and financial, free and reduced lunch, then that's something that we know, but at least we can assess that yes, the high needs and the non-high needs, like that we're meeting both of their needs. Right now, we can't tell. We do know that, 50% or 45% is in the third and fourth quartile, but we don't know who, right? And we just want to make sure that as we're looking at all of the other schools, that we can see that so that we can make informed decisions to help where we can. And it may tell us the same thing, but just that level of extra detail, I think, will help.
Well, I think if we can get this presentation, you're going to see that there are action steps and there are actually areas where the board can be supportive. And I think the principals are here to kind of share and showcase their data, but also to show their action plans and what their plans are. But the nitty-gritty work going into the data student by student is the job of the schools, and the principal works on that and has a a data team at every building. We have a district data team. So we're constantly looking at, and we want every child to make growth from year to year. So third to fourth, fourth to fifth, and every single child, there's a target for every kid to make that growth. We're looking at how much of the target they've made. So that's happening. That's the work of our schools. So, but we do want the board to know how you can support us. So that's going to be part of the action plan. So as you go through this, I think let's let the principals kind of share the story so that we can get to that part, because it's an important part.
It
for
is
sure.
an important part, yes. And then I will, depending on what I hear, I'll probably make the same request again.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Bev, then Matthew, then Adrian.
I was gonna ask, Mr. Wheeler, because he brought up some interesting questions when he talked about why the students do not meet standards and what to do with the students approaching standards. But I might wait until he talks about his action steps, because that might answer the questions that he said him and his data team talk about. So unless he wants to answer them now, that's fine with me, but I can listen and wait.
Thank you, Bev.
Matthew.
Okay, the reason I'm being so insistent, and I hope you're understanding that it is with the greatest of respect, is because when I saw these presentations in prior years, my initial reaction was to say, my God, 56% don't meet standards in this, and 59% don't meet standards in that. And it's terrified me. Now I understand, because it is a very complex situation forced on us by a structure of the way the state makes us give these exams, that we're doing a far better job than that because of the differentiation we do with those who are in disabilities, etc. But looking at these numbers has left some people coming to me saying, why is Groton doing so poorly? And if they have time for the hour explanation, they'll now understand it. But I'm hoping that as we go forward, we will find some way to tease out the numbers to say, these are our overall figures, we stand by them. But when you go to a deeper depth, this is what we're doing. I think it will make it a lot clearer to the people who on town council and on RTM who are going to be responsible for approving our budget requests. We're doing a fine job. It just isn't obvious from this chart. Thank you.
Adrian.
I would just like to say that I do appreciate the numbers like this, and I don't think that we should stop giving these numbers. Because this is how we can compare ourselves to the other districts across the state. And because this is basically a standardized format statewide. So I think it in every district hopefully has special ed children, you know, or I mean, I'm sure they all have similar numbers of special ed children. But one thing that's been brought up before is that this data maybe in some kind of like a bar graph, you know, normed out. I forget what they would call that from statistics, with like a curve to show us where these kids might be in the group. So do we have like a really high point at, you know, 75% of the kids, you know, or is it really heavy right down at the bottom, like the kids in the yellow category are, you know, approaching standards? Are they really near the lower approaching or more? And I know district wide, we had gone over that.
Yeah, we saw some good news on that.
Yeah,
where they
no,
were, close.
I think everything seems to be better
Yeah,
this year,
yeah.
or at least most of it from last year. But just having some kind of a curve so we can understand a little bit more than 25% blocks.
Yeah, since we stand at 20% of our students being special needs, as opposed to the statewide average of 17%, it isn't exactly an apples to apples. Well, it's an apples to other kinds of apples kind of comparison. If you look at our numbers or our percentages, our proportions compared to other students, we're a little heavier than average. And so it's more of a rhetorical thing. It's an appearance thing. But when you see, for example, well, on ELA, we meet and exceed, and then it comes to 45%. What do you think of? How do you qualify that? You go, that's less than 50%. Perhaps if you accounted for the weighting, or overweight in special needs, that might take it about 50%. Not that that's not concerning, but people have this this thing about that 50% mark. We're below 50%, it meets and exceeds. Whereas if we were above, we'd say, oh, okay, well, at least we're above 50%, work to do. Somehow that feels better. It'd be a slight move, but somehow it looks better. Because how we color this thing, it's not just about numbers, it's about our attitude to the thing, our anxiety, what do we mean when we say 45%, or 51%? So I would like to see the numbers teased out, not to segregate necessarily, but to account for the fact that we are a little heavier than average on special needs for the reasons that were stated earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the record, I think both approaches would have value, and having the two together would be probably a good way to go forward, is to have like a broad overview and then have some breakouts underneath that. Because I think it is important to kind of see it through a number of different filters that could give you different insights.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Actually, I really like Jen's breakout, the high needs versus non-high needs. It's not overly cumbersome in terms of numbers. And seeing that helps us, it informs us in how well we're doing with our overall DEI objectives, right? To educate people with all sorts of backgrounds, all types of needs. I will say, this is from last meeting too, seeing that over basically less than half of our students are meeting or exceeding standards, regardless of what you look at, is jarring. And I think many of us probably feel that's not where we want to be. And I look forward to hearing, I see that you have it in your action plan about steps forward.
I think we did bring you that data with the whole district when we looked at all elementary. So we did give you a view of that as a district, so.
Yeah, that was jarring. So this is the second time seeing it.
Okay. I'm gonna continue on. So I just want to, obviously echo all of what's being said, but at the building level, when we spend time in our data team meetings, it really starts with the administrators going through the scores as we get them in, and then meeting with our grade level teams and kind of going through the data. That every one of these numbers that's up here is a student, and we are desperately trying to understand who they are as a learner. So, the whole point with that being said is, we look at each category as every one of those numbers is a student, and every one of those students needs something. So even if we look at the kids that are, meeting and exceeding, that's great. I'm glad they're there, but are they making growth within that band? We look at our students that are not meeting and our students that are approaching, same thing. We were very happy to see here. We focused in that yellow band specifically to say, who are those students? 36. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I'm sorry. They're on ELL. Who are those 17? Who is the 7 and the 12? Those students that are approaching, and how close are they? And then what is it that we can get to offer them and help to move them forward? It is difficult for me to look at these numbers as well, because we do have a lot of students with a lot of needs, but we also know that we have a lot of supports in place for them. And we have a lot of ways to track and manage data too. So I feel like that's important. If you want to move on to the math slide, that would be great. So once again, this kind of breaks it down. Same thing. We've got your 4 bands here. And we spent with math, we spent a lot of time looking at that yellow band, that 0.25%, looking at, where are these students falling and approaching? How close are they? What do they need? What services can we provide for them? We noticed that some of these kiddos actually were not receiving intervention, because we had a lot of students that were in the red, if you will. And, we have our reading coaches and our reading teachers, and we have our math coaches and specialists, and they are servicing as many students as we possibly can feed them. But we did realize that approaching band was something that we could look at with our tier 1 instruction and really look at who these kids are and how close are they.
Bev?
Yeah. Mr. Will, I appreciate what you're saying, but what makes this year different than last year? Did you ask yourself the same questions last year? And how can we move these students that are approaching over, moving forward? Didn't you ask that same questions last year that you're asking this year? And what do
Yeah,
you plan to do that's different then?
we do, Bev. I do have a plan at the end. Are you okay if we get there and then we can follow back to your question?
Okay, yeah, because every year we talk about the same thing and every year we don't see, I'm not gonna say a great improvement, but I don't know. It just seems like we rehash the same thing every year. So I just wanted really you to dive into what did you see last year and what you're doing different this year than you saw last year? Because every year you must be trying to move these students up and over. All the students, even the ones that are exceed, you're gonna try to move them up. So I'll be interested in hearing what you have to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you go back one slide?
Sorry.
No, okay, that one right there, yeah. Actually, there should have been one, was it the ELA? Maybe we already missed it, yeah. I just wanted to go back to that, there it is, the ELA slide. One of the things I did want to highlight here is we did keep track of a cohort of students. And they're the current 5th grade students. We did closely look at this group. We noticed that when they were in 3rd grade, 40% of the students had met proficiency. That's either meets or exceeds. And we watched that grow to 5th grade now to 54%. So not a huge jump, but it certainly is growth that we were keeping track of.
And that's what we do, Beverly, is we look from year to year growth. You look at the grade levels with the different cohorts, and of course you want those to improve, but you also, more importantly, look at the cohorted group. So starting in 3rd, when they move to 4th, when they move to 5th, and then when they go to 6th, it's really important that they continue to make progress. And the ones that we can account for who are with us and have taken the SBAC all those years are the ones that we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have the data.
Anne Marie, if you want to jump to the sign.
And next, yeah.
So once again, I want to highlight something here that we've been keeping a close eye on, which is our science instruction. And we noticed in 2022, 33% of our 5th graders were at proficiency. That went to 46 in 2023, and now we're at 50% in 2024. So they are incremental steps and growth along the ladder. But we've been working very, very hard at looking at our science instruction, more importantly, how students are perceiving it. We did want to talk about this as well. I don't know if you folks have seen the assessment itself, but it's very, very heavy in literacy. So one of the things that we answer a lot of questions about with parents is many folks think that when they're taking this science test, that it's factual. It's about what they, factual information that students have learned from K to 5. It's really not. It's a reading test. It honestly is. They are being, asked questions that they read a passage, and they have to be able to comprehend deeply and understand how to put information together to point.
And they're also
Very
sometimes
heavy in ELA.
experimenting online, doing an experiment.
But just to talk about what we've done in this, with this work is to really kind of process this with students as they are, experiencing science instruction. We have a new district STEM coordinator. He's been coming into our building and doing some co-teaching with our classroom teachers, really getting those teachers to understand we have IEBs that we can use as a teaching tool. And we're using them in that capacity versus just having students take them as a blank snapshot or testing. It's more about processing. How are we taking this test? How are we understanding how to take it? So I feel like that's been very helpful for sure. This next slide comes from our school culture and climate survey that was conducted by students, parents, and our staff. So this slide is really just about what it is, our plan this year, how we're responding to that survey, and what steps are we putting into place for it. So we really looked at our results. It indicated a really positive focus on relationships, both with our students and staff. students were responding positively to being able to identify staff members in the building that were their go-to. It was very high for the staff as well. Results also indicated a high percentage of students feeling like they belong in our school. We're very proud of that. We want students to feel safe where they are. We want students to look around and see people and folks that look just like them and sound just like them. As we continue with our monthly superpower focus at Mystic River, we're integrating our kindness theme throughout the year survey. We paid particular attention to the student surveys. There were some questions that were lower scoring than others, but it was just around how students were using kind words towards each other. So we're building this really into our school culture, pairing them with our superpowers that we highlight every month. Our parent survey, the data was fairly good, but we do know that we need to expand our communication with families. We do send out newsletters, but we've increased those. We have posts on Parent Square that we're probably using too many of those. But one of the things that really came out of that was the long-term planning. So, parents really indicated that we'd like to see planning over the course of a year so we can be prepped for that versus sending out a snapshot per month. So things like our, just simple things like our spirit days, the parents all have them for the entire year versus just putting them out one at a time. We're also
be ready.
including our school events as well. Those are always very popular. And I feel like that goes back to a question that Bev had asked. The school events, and Mr. Padua is here. He's with me and Mrs. Sabo when we have those, but we offer anywhere between 4 to 5 school events at night where families come in. They can be geared around science nights. They can be geared around, math nights, or even just a family game night. And that provides us an additional opportunity to build relationships with families. And we have those sidebar conversations with families about, getting their kids to school. They feel supported. They feel comfortable talking to us. And I feel like that goes a long way. The last is our quick deep dive into our staff survey. There was, we really wanted to look closer at the staff morale and dig into why those scores were looking like some of the staff were feeling like their morale needs to be higher. We've developed a climate culture school climate committee, and that's really, ran by a group of dedicated teachers that have really spent time looking at trying to improve that staff morale within our own adult community.
Recognize you, Jen. It's a question.
Two separate questions. So in regards to the teachers, right? And the morale question, we've had discussions on that, maybe like 2 meetings, maybe even more. I would love to see or understand if they feel like they're making comments and that it's being heard. Because after a while, if you feel like you're not being heard, you're just not going to say anything. And then you think you're doing okay, but you really aren't. So I just want to get your feel for how you perceive like the teach, and that's hard, right? Because you don't know what they're feeling. You only know what they're telling you. But to get a better understanding of that, right? Like, do they feel like they're being heard and that like whatever they're saying, that there is action? Obviously, we can't act upon everything, but as long as they realize that there is like an opportunity to be heard, that's what drives culture change. Second, for parents of students with English as a second language, is there an option where they can opt? And I don't even know if we have this capability to say, like, we want our communications in Spanish and then we translate. I'm not really sure, or whatever other languages are out there.
Yeah. Actually, parents as long as the parent is signing up for it, they can sign up for a preferred language, and whatever they're receiving will get translated.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
they just have to know how to do that.
And our
Yeah,
website
so
does that
maybe-
too. In any language, they can see whatever's on the
And
website.
there's a ton of languages that they.
CT Sense does the same thing. It translates
Perfect.
UP to multiple languages.
Perfect. So then, like you had said, like, as long as they know how to do that.
Yeah.
So, maybe we can help them along the way.
Yeah, I think, just to go back to your first talking point, Jen, we take the survey very seriously. I mean, I feel like, I go right to the pie charts first, and then there's a ton of comments that you read through.
Good.
So we're trying to sort out themes, and I think that what we try to do is look at a general, like, what are three really big themes that we know we're kind of gleaning from this? And what we did this year was I say last year, that's when the survey data was collected, is at the end of the year, we met with our staff and we kind of split up into what we thought were the general themes of fairly big concerns. So there were a lot of folks commenting about some of the discipline things that were going on in the school. Then there was a lot of conversations about climate and, morale and culture. And then we had a lot of folks really commenting on, we want more time developing our magnet. So we broke up into those three groups and we met together, the three of us split up. And we created plans with our staff,
With the teacher
listening,
input, yeah.
writing down ideas. And then we met again this year prior to the school year starting, and we're gonna meet regularly on TLI day. So I feel like it goes back to your point. We wanted them to know that, yes, we are reading these, and, sometimes they're tough to read, but we try to stay away from, taking things personally and just being more of what can I really walk away with, and how can we make significant change? So I think that was well received by our teaching staff. And I feel like we've kind of now stepped back a bit and we've let the groups kind of run with us there, if you will.
Yeah, I just brought that up because I was a little concerned. I think it was like only 135 or 137 respondents. It's concerning. It shows like a shutdown
You talk about, but that was
overall,
district, yeah.
overall for district wide. So if it's 137 respondents district wide, like what is it in individual schools, right? So that's good. I'm glad that you guys met at the end and at the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah. That was the previous slide. That's kind of what was showcasing what we were going with.
Thank you.
Do we do this with
recognize
Paris as
Ian,
well?
And then I'm going to recognize Adrian.
I just wanted to follow up on what Jen was saying. Actually, like that conversation we had when we looked at the district-wide climate survey, having those sorts of numbers to understand participation rates would be good also per site, per school, just to get an understanding of like how much engagement is occurring. Thank you.
Adrian.
Yeah, I kind of echo that. I wonder if that's to some extent the teachers maybe feel like they're not heard, and maybe that's why they don't fill them out. So it'd be great to know why we don't have, why there is such a low kind of turnout. I know it's a lot more in elementary than it is when it gets up to high school. But separately, what we had in some of the other data, but we don't have now is how is the school compared to last year? Because I know you kind of had a few snippets here and there about improvements, like in grade 5 math. Are we higher this year than last year, and 4 and 3 and all that? I mean, are we?
No, I mean, the slides were up in terms of, you're talking about cohort data.
Yeah, comparing from year to year. So is your school actually performing better this year in certain things, in like, 3, 4, 5 ELA or math or whatever?
I feel like we see pockets of that. I think I highlighted there was one cohort, our grade 5 cohort, that we did see that, as we tracked them, we were seeing that they were making improvement. I believe it was ELA, that's what I had written down.
And science, she said.
And science, yeah.
Yeah.
But listen, we do struggle with this. We are looking at students across the board with their growth targets in particular, Adrian, to drill down into, each student themselves to say, how are we meeting individual needs and moving kids? I feel like one of the things that we spend some time talking about is we do have a very high population of special need and special ed students and EL students. But one of the things that always drives me, I think I go to school with my own son in the back of my head, meaning there are kids in the building that are in those greens and blue vans, and we need to make sure that they're being fed like everybody else in that school. So one of the things that we do as we meet with our grade level teaming is to look at who are these kids and how are they getting into the needs. I think one of the things to Bev's point about what we're doing differently this year in the action plan is we are looking with our ELA coaching and our literacy specialists, looking specifically at the WIN block. And that is within our reading block, and it's a time for, certain students to be pulled out for remedial services, but more importantly, those students that are either at or above, they are with their classroom teacher and they are getting small group instruction based around what their needs are.
Yeah.
And I'm very hopeful of keeping track as we look ahead, through this new ELA program. How is that impacting those scores? I do feel like we need to spend more time looking at, I think it was Jen's, to Jen's point, tracking those students and making sure they are making growth versus just being stagnant within, those bands. You could have a student that is, proficient every single year, but have they made growth? I mean, that's where I feel like we do spend a lot of time with groups of kids that are really, really struggling. We're trying desperate to get them what they need, but I feel like there's still a large population of our kiddos who are meeting and exceeding, but we have to make sure we go back to that. We have to look at how are they growing as well. It's not, as you can imagine, it's not an easy gig. But that is our focus. To Bev's point, what are we doing differently this year? We are really utilizing that WIN block with our literacy coach to really focus on those students that are with their classroom teacher in tier 1.
And I think in math, and we see this across the district, really looking at the objectives that the kids as a group are not mastering as well as they should and spending more time on that. So school by school and as a district, we're looking at it. I know on our November 5th day, we're going to have the math specialist working with Anne Marie, Lauren, and I doing some real deep dives in the data to look at us as a district, look school by school, what are some of the other things we can do? So looking at the core instruction to make sure we're targeting the core with what is needed. So for improvement. So you hear a lot about the IABs, those are the interims. They're used both instructionally and they're used in a test setting. They're used sometimes as you might have remembered with your own children, the problem of the day or, the icebreaker where they can all talk about it. So we're really trying to zero in on the areas that need improvement overall and then kid by kid.
All right, I'm going to recognize Ian.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think maybe also moving forward, a way we look at, a lot of times we look at the data through the lens of classes, grades. But as we've all been talking about cohorts, tracking cohorts year by year, I think maybe that could become a standard practice in how we present the data and start tracking cohorts from year to year and like kind of tweak the lens that we're looking through.
We do, but I think to your point, Ian, it's really important to make sure it's the same group of kids. I think, I probably don't experience this as much as Charles Barnum with kids that are coming in and out or grading. But we've talked about that at the building level, to Bev's point and to Adrian's point, let's look at each one of these bands and my goal is to say, are there kids, and I'm just going to go right to the colors. Are there kids in red that are now at the end of red or at the beginning of yellow? Same thing with that yellow band, which is just approaching.
Right.
I feel like and that's one of my points of the plan this year, that's a group we're going to focus heavily on.
Right, transitions and progressions.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. I like that.
Yeah, that'd be great to have as part of this package moving forward.
And I'm going to recognize Jen.
I apologize. I'm just thinking out loud right now, right? So at the Fitch level, right? I believe it's our sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are Falcon tutors, and most of the time, and the higher, well, goodness, honor society are tutors, right? They end up tutoring like their Fitch Falcon tutors, they tutor like the athletics, right? Like I said, I'm just coming up as I'm sitting here. Maybe we take those same students and have them like mentor those people, students in the green and blue, right? Because this is math that those kids are more than well equipped to help. And it suffices for their volunteer time it creates that like, oh, this could be me, like 4 years from now. And it just brings that continuity, like from elementary school, middle school to senior. That it's just something that came up, and it's from when I went to school, like in Australia, we had houses similar to like Harry Potter, right? And then we always had mentorship throughout, like the district that we were in, regardless of whether you were like in 10th grade and 3rd grade, you were all in a house color. So, but in this instance, we take those students who are who are tutors already, and we just take them down to the middle school. So it's extra hands. And it's a bunch of willing young adults, to show mentorship.
You want to talk about your action steps?
Yes, yes. And I can see Bev up there on the, I can see her out there. So Bev, I'm going to keep calling back to you. I'm hoping that I can answer your questions as I walk through here, okay? Because I heard you loud and clear. What are we doing this year that is different from last year, right? So the areas of focus, I feel like these are like an umbrella, right? We looked at our data. We looked at math overall. What is our goal for ELA and math? We want our students to increase their overall yearly growth in proficiency in both ELA and math. To Adrian's point, really maybe breaking this down to who are these kids that we're talking about? We're going to track them from this year to next year and see where they are. We did notice when we were looking at some of the subgroups that were tested that we wanted to really focus when we think of our math specialists and how they're servicing children. I just up here, you can see there's place value and fractions in grade 3, multi-digit operations and problem solving in grade 5, and of course, fractions in grade 4. So these are areas that we know are part of our state standards. They're obviously in our curriculum, and these are focus areas for us this year. Our ELA, as we're looking as well, same thing. We want all of our students to grow and proficiency in ELA, but we are looking at a heavy focus on that stamina, independent reading, written response to reading. And once again, we want our focus to be on these small group skill sets that are going in our win blocks. Our science, I wanted this to be something that we included as well. We're going to continue to focus heavily on utilizing the IABs as a teaching tool for kids. In addition, we are going to utilize the district assessments that are being worked on with Ben Moon to help drive that instruction. That is where students will actually have the ability to practice with these kinds of problems. Lastly, we are going to implement and use the interactive science kits through Mystery Science. These are basically an umbrella. It kind of fleshes out down below. It kind of goes a little deeper. I'm just going to rip through the bottom, and then if we've got questions, I certainly don't mind. One of the things that we've been working closely with Ben Moon, he's the district director of STEM and magnet programs. We've talked heavily about learning walks in science, where he comes into the building and we go into grade levels, and we're really looking at science instruction, providing really deliberate feedback to teachers and really talking about what we're seeing and what we can do. We're looking at continuing to utilize our numeracy screener for K through 5 students 3 times a year. This is, in an effort to address content target areas and help us to create those small groups. Our district buys into Dreambox. We're really going to look at fleshing that out and data teaming with Paul DePadua and teachers, and really looking at growth and standards through monthly math data teaming. The math specialists, we do not have coaches. I'm sorry, we do not have tutors this year, but the 2 math specialists that we have, we changed this model to look a little bit different. This year, they are going to provide push-in intervention. And Bev, to your point, this is going to look differently. It's going to be where they're meeting with small groups of students that will rotate, and those groups will be focused on certain skill areas. That is in addition to the classroom teacher during the math block as well. We added in, it's always about teacher time that we're always trying to covet because they don't have enough of it, but we felt it was really important to make sure we added in a weekly planning. and instructional meetings with grade levels with that math specialist, because now that math specialist is going to live in their space during that block, and they're going to be pulling students in small group. So we felt like that piece needed to happen. ELA coaching, grades 3 and 5 and K-2 is going to look a little different. But we, like everybody else in the district, we are implementing Wit and Wisdom, and we are continuing U-Fly in grades K-3. But our specialist this year is going to spend a lot of time providing support to those teachers in Wit and Wisdom. More importantly, she will help to do some coaching and some co-teaching in those classrooms. However, this is where we are approaching things a little different this year. We're looking to really target small group instructional practices in that WIN block. Once again, we have a literacy specialist in the building that is going to work with classroom teachers to talk about this. It is a time that's not a long period of time, so it's got to be succinct, it's got to be really focused, and it's got to be, focused on individual student needs. We've already had conversations with our classroom teachers. It is a beautiful orchestration, this WIN block of students that are being serviced through remedial reading or EL, and then students that are being serviced with their tier 1 support with their classroom teacher. Once again, to Adrian's point, these are kids that are students that are performing at or above, or students that are just on the verge. So we are, Bev, to your point, we're spending a lot of time this year looking at that small group instruction and how we can effectively get the most out of that, so we can really monitor and track student progress and how they are hopefully making growth towards their goals. Our K-2 literacy specialist is going to continue that hard work with phonics. I tell Susan this story every time she comes into my building. Our classroom teachers, when they're coming to teaming with us, Steve, this is working.
I know.
The
He's hearing across the
phonics
district.
instruction with U-Fly. So it's obviously very, very good news. But she's going to continue to offer that support in small group instruction as well, but also to continue to coach. Once again, it's going to be focused on those WIN blocks in small group instructional practice.
Mr.
Just-
Wheeler, can I ask you a quick question? Do you have enough staff to do the small group instructions? Or do you need more staffing?
I'm going to answer your question. We need more staffing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you
No,
for being
one of the
honest.
things
Because-
I mean, I live in a town as well, and I pay taxes, and I go to board meetings, and I listen to how, my particular town is allocating money, whether it be at a town council meeting or whether it be at a Board of Ed meeting. But I also live the life of this every single day. And when you look at the demographics of Mystic River, and I know Jamie's going to speak next, but when you look at the demographics, we have a needy population, and we want desperately to help these kids. And there are times, Bev, that I don't know that, 2 math specialists, the reading teachers that we have, I don't know that that's enough.
Well, it was a loss to lose so many tutors, and we, none of us wanted that to happen. And every grant we get, we try to add some more.
So Bev, to your point, last year we had math specialists that were pulling some small groups, and then we had tutors that were pushing into classrooms to help students. So we had to kind of move that around this year, and we've got our math specialists just pushing in. Now, there could be times that they're still going to pull a small group out, and it's just going to depend on the timing and where the need is for each of those kids. But I've got to be able to still hammer home the message to classroom teachers that those kids are going to be serviced. The students in front of you also need to be able to have that same delivery of, small group instruction and focus on their needs too.
If you could have more staffing, what kind of staffing would you want?
Trick question. Well, listen, if I'm just going to be selfish and think about my school, I'm going to look desperately at making sure that we have tutors that are in for ELA and math. When I look at we just went through our DIBELS testing with our reading team, and we are looking at obviously focusing at the most needs when we look at pull-out services for interventions. But we have a chunk of students that is in that emerging band, which is going to be on tier one instruction, classroom teacher support. So if we had additional tutors or maybe an additional reading teacher, we would be able to feed more kids into that middle section.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen.
But I will also say, this is another bullet point down below. We have a high population of EL students. Right now, we have 2 full-time ELA tutors that are servicing the majority of those students. We have 4 building subs. Susan hears it from me all the time. We have 4 building subs that we will graciously take on every day. 2 of them, however, are filling vacancies in our building. So when we have outages, we have to fill the places, right? We have to fill where the need is. And there are times that those EL tutors will get pulled to cover places. So if you're looking at additional staff too, I hate to throw this out there, but we need to be able to cover the building. And if that means building subs, that's building subs. I'm looking at Jamie because we have those conversations on a regular basis. I feel like the years of when I thought back to my own teaching career of having those teachers, those substitute teachers that would sign up when there was a vacancy, I don't ever see that. Nobody's signing up. So the building subs are the golden goose. But at the end of the day, I have half of them filling vacancies that I can't fill. One is in a long-term for a special ed position, and one is in for a one-to-one para assignment that I cannot leave the student unattended. So every day I know I'm going in with that deficit, Bev, and I pray that I can keep my EL tutors delivering services to students.
So if there's one thing the board can do for you, what would you want us to do?
Support the budget when we move forward. If you're sitting with me at my desk and you're asking me what my needs are, my answer that I give you is going to be based on facts and what I see on a regular basis. I won't give you any fluff. And I feel like if we're putting that forward to you, it would just be to support that budget.
So
Okay,
with zero budgeting, they've been given their spreadsheet for this year and they have to consider for next year. I've also asked them about building project needs, like what are their priorities with the building, whether we need to put it in a CIP, whether we need to add it to the budget, and also staffing needs. So they think about the budget that they have now. Is it going to suffice to, going forward? What will their needs be? Are there shifts in priorities? What are their building needs? And then what are their staffing needs? So they're from the ground up thinking of that. So we will be bringing that forth when you first see the first version of the superintendent's budget. And then depending on your, what the board wants to focus on, we'll go from there.
Could you?
Jay, if I may, can I ask one more question, Mr. Wheeler?
Then I'm going to recognize Adrian, then I'm going to recognize Ian. I just want to make sure
Okay.
everybody is heard.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler, in May, when we met with the GEA, one of their concerns was the elementary school schedule. What is your feeling about the schedule? Is it perfect? Do you need to tweak it? I mean, because that was a concern of the GEA.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bev, one of the biggest hurdles that we had is we're obviously implementing a new ELA curriculum, Wit and Wisdom, and it requires a lot of hours on the calendar, or I'm sorry, on the schedule. So, when I look at grades K through 2, you're looking at 2.5 hours of an ELA block. When I'm looking at the upper grades 4 through 5, K through 3, 4 through 5, it's a 2-hour ELA block. So if you start by building a schedule there, then you've got at least an additional 60 minutes for math. I like that for the upper grades. The grades K and 1 might have a 45-minute math block, but that goes next on the schedule. And then you factor in lunch, the hour at lunch and recess, and a 40-minute special block. There is not.
Then you have to do social studies and science. And what? Go to the bathroom. It's jam-packed. It's even more jam-packed this year than last year.
So Bev,
Susan,
I'm hearing-
Susan, with no
Yeah.
disrespect, I'd like to hear from Mr. Wheeler, Susan, with
sorry.
no disrespect to
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bev, what I think I'm hearing from you is a future agenda item, actually. I think we could spend an entire night, maybe with all the principals in the room, talking about something like this.
Bev, let me just sum up. It is a very tightly woven schedule. I think one of the things that all of the principals, we actually met together in the summertime as a collective group to talk about this. And we were dedicated to certain blocks, like, for example, the science block. I knew that was something that we need to have on there. We were able to offer like small little clips, like 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, but we were all dedicated to saying we need to at least once a week have at least a 60-minute block, a longer block where there's like a whole group instructional piece, but it offers an opportunity for someone like Ben to come in and do some of that work, through the hands-on activities and the experiments that kids are working through. So I feel like that was, the way we approached it, Bev, was we were looking at what are the must-dos that we have to put on there, the non-negotiables, and what are things that we know we need on there that kids need. But
Thank you.
it's not an easy thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to recognize Adrian and then Ian.
All right, first, just to something you said, Susan, what is the 0% budget request?
So we do a zero, we start with the ground floor and what are the needs? So each year they build their own budget. They look at data from the last year, they forecast forward, and they create their own budget.
So, but has there been instruction for the principals to meet the requests of last year and not increase the budget with?
There's been no request. I want to see what their needs are. So we haven't put a number on it. So we've just said, look at your budget, look what you're spending now. What do you forecast for next year? And then what are those priority building needs and what are the priority staffing needs?
All right. I guess, so I'll start with Mr. Wheeler, but this is going to be a little bit of a loaded question because I'm going to ask you to kind of speak for your staff. So knowing that we are intending to have the district at 75% on the Smarter Balance Index by 2030, I believe that's the goal.
Not a
Which
percent,
is-
but the target is 75, right?
Yeah, it's all right. 75 is the target on the Smarter Balance Index, which we know is a little bit different than the numbers we were talking about today. By 2030, from the point of your staff's perspective, what do you think that they need in like more staff, support staff? And I know you've answered this partially already, but I wrote it all down, so I'm going to read it all. Programming, training, or materials to accomplish that goal. Do we have enough? And can you let us know what you think we're going to need to meet that goal?
I feel like that is a loaded question, Adrian, for sure, but there is an answer. And we do have the answer. I can give you an answer now, but it's not going to be enough, right? I need to be able to spend the time to really think of a comprehensive answer for you, but I already alluded to part of my answer is going to be staffing. It is, I feel like, and I don't mean certified staff in particular, although additional reading or special ed teacher would be very helpful. We are noticing that population of special ed increasing in the speech pathologists. I think where I start to worry is when I look at caseloads in special ed, and when you have special ed teachers that have a classroom size caseload, you're looking at 20+ kids. I instantly go to, how are they going to do that? I mean, not in addition to the instruction that they're delivering, they have a slew of paperwork. And one of the things we joke about at Mystic River is the amount of special ed meetings that we have on a daily basis. It is absolutely brutal. We have Shira Sabo, who's an additional assistant principal at Mystic River with us. She can, on any given 3-4 days a week, we don't see her during the day. So every time those meetings are taking place, the classroom teacher's there and the special ed teacher is there. So if the special ed teacher has 2 meetings a week, that's at least an hour and a half, 2 hours that they're not in front of students. And they've got to go back and make that time up.
Pulling out the building sub to cover the classroom teacher in order for them to be at the attending that meeting. So.
I do worry about my special ed staff because those numbers are only getting larger, and it is not just about delivering instruction for them. It is about how they're managing their day with the meetings that they have to attend, that paperwork that we know that they have to improve upon and get done. But more importantly, Adrian, we live this every day. Just today, we had a couple of students. They are resource special ed students, and they're very behavioral. So that student was very disruptive in a classroom. They needed a quieter setting. They get pulled back to the resource room. And then now that resource room is being impacted. we're doing it because it's what's best for that student and we have to regulate a student. But every little bit of that moment during the day is impacting a special ed teacher's, flow. It's how they're teaching on a regular basis. So, I mean, I feel like I go right to the areas on SBAC that I worry about, and it's our special ed group and it's our EL students. So I think if I was asking for a big give, it would be, how do we support those two populations?
All right. Well, I personally would love to see the principal's requests when it comes time to budget directly. To see what individual principals, because you guys are being held accountable to these numbers to some extent.
Yeah.
And if you're not being given what you need, the board needs to know about that. We need to make financial decisions on what we ask the town for and what we think is in the town's best interest and our students' best interest to fund. So I personally would really like to know what the actual needs are. I mean, we all know that we've been held at very low budget increases, averaged out over the last 10 years or more. And that's having an impact. And, you guys need to tell us what that impact is and what the needs are to fix that.
I think just going back to your original question, if I'm asking my staff, and I'm sure there's some folks listening in tonight, we did have this influx of tutors over the past couple of years. What that afforded teachers is if I've got 20 kids in my room and half of that classroom of students is struggling, when I go to small group instruction, I'm only going to be able to do one thing at a time. So if I had someone else in the room and it was a tutor, they are now taking a small group and they're attending to a group of students so that you're able to really create a plan where you're rotating through that. I feel like that extra support for classroom teachers, they'll ask for that.
All right. Can't wait to see it.
Ian.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to echo that sentiment as far as like hearing the site requests directly from the sites. I think that'd be helpful. And also, I think there was some confusion as far as like the terms, the zero budget or the for the superintendent. You were saying a zero budget approach. That term, I think, was maybe causing a little bit of confusion.
So they basically look at the budget almost from scratch to see, taking into account what they've asked for in prior years and forecasting for the future so that they build a budget up from the ground up.
Right. But there is some reference to previous years.
I said that.
Yeah,
You look
yeah.
back, you look, and you adjust.
But it's not necessarily a pressure for like a 0% increase.
No,
No,
zero-based budgeting is an accounting term.
Right, so
Yeah.
I think the fact that the word zero is in there
yeah.
You
gets us all kind of on our gets our hackles up. So like that term can get us a little.
No, it's not a
riled up.
ceiling. It's
Yeah.
not a ceiling.
It's a
Yeah.
floor.
Okay,
Sure.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm in my own experience and my own training, like, small group instruction is of the highest priority in my mind. Like what I do, depends on small group instruction. I personally, in my own educational experience coming up as a student, I benefited greatly from small group instruction. So I'm a firm believer in smaller teacher to student ratios. And one of the most horrifying things about what happened with the tutors last year was not only the fact that they were all, so many were exiting the system, but also the disrupted relationships. Because also like educational environments benefit greatly from long-term relationships, especially with behavioral situations. So I can only imagine that, the complications that you all must be dealing with. So one of the things that I look forward to being a proponent on is if we're going to have, if we're going to want to attract tutors and paras and, we need to invest long-term in that. So, I get nervous about funding through grants. And I want to look forward to funding personnel through the budget. We need to assign line items, and make the investment, make the commitment. And knowing what's needed and that's important, because as we try to advocate on the district's behalf, we need to know what, what the needs really are. And don't be shy. Like, if you think you need to increase tutors and paras and you want to make that commitment to your staff, then, you'll have a willing advocate over here. Because that's aside from all the technology and all the other stuff, supplies, software, at the end of the day, education is about interaction, and you need interaction on a regular basis, and you need relationships. And I think, we need to make the commitment so we can keep tutors and paras for longer periods of time and not have every year be an anxiety inducing event where, no one knows who's coming back or when, or at what level. So like, I would encourage you to be as frank as you can be, as when it comes to trying to get the staff that you need.
I'm going to recognize Jen and then Matthew.
Mr. Wheeler, thank you. Coming up first, you never know if you're gonna get the easy path or the hard path. So you got the hard path. Thank you. You're representing your fellow principals. But so thank you. I concur with Adrian and Ian, right? I think this was a term you used, be selfish, right? Put it in, let us do some of that, and Susan, right, do some of that heavy lifting, and like put whatever budget we're gonna put forward. You focus in on what you need so that you can run your school, to the best of what this town can afford, but let us take on that heavy burden and don't worry. Right, so we will have to go scrutinize whatever we have to scrutinize, but we would like to hear what you really need, and that goes with you as well, for all the principals if you're listening.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Matthew, then Mike, and then Bev.
Thank you. I've heard Mr. Wheeler speak about the special education paperwork load, not to mention some vacancies and allocation of building subs to special education. And I'm wondering, just as in the medical profession, physicians are coping with a parallel problem through use of technology, to use voice transcription that can later be put down by secretaries. So I'm wondering, Susan, if we could ask Clint to work with the principals to see if there's any potential technology use that it won't eliminate, but maybe to mitigate the teacher impacts, to free time for the teachers to teach.
Mike.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation and enduring. I just had a question about field trips. I see that you mentioned opportunities, out of school field trips specifically, like opportunities to go to Pfizer, NESS, Niagara Children's Museum. Does every student have access to an out of school field trip opportunity each year?
Yeah, so we are very fortunate to have a fantastic PTO. And they have funded last year and this year, they made a commitment to make sure every grade level in our school has a field trip. And they're paying for it. So that last year was such a relief for me because I didn't know how we were gonna do that with the busing. But they came through last year and this year. But we have Emma Rotner, who is working with Jamie as well. She's the magnet coordinator. She's worked closely with our community coordinator, and we've made these incredible connections with people right in our community that are going to be not only coming into our building. I'm not going to talk about that. There it is.
It's your first slide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we have parents in our building that work at Pfizer.
The microphone, I'm sorry. I just noticed your microphone is off.
We've had parents that work in our building that have kids in our building that work at Pfizer. Also, we have folks that are here at NESS. And we've made connections with both of those organizations where they're going to be coming into the building to offer opportunities for students. But then also we have within our property, we have the Merritt Park walk there. We have, I call it a wetlands, but it's really a place where people fish right behind us. And we also have walking trails. They're going to tap into that, with Groton space, and they're going to be able to tie in some nice, I call them field trips, but where we're not leaving the property. In addition, we're partnering with Niantic Children's Museum. This is with our magnet theme. And they're going to be coming in to offer programming basically for our younger grades. It is a balance. We want these opportunities for our students to go away and experience field trips, but also have folks come into the building. But it's a balance of that with what the big task of making sure we have our instructional day sought after as well. So our community coordinator, she fell out of the sky for us this year. So she's working closely with Paul DePadua, and they are making sure that whatever comes into the school and wherever we're going out, it is closely linked to curriculum objectives.
Wow, that was a find.
She's good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Beverly.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Wheel, I just want to thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate an honest, open discussion because that's the only way we can help you as a Board of Education. So I'm not going to speak long and go on and on and on. I just want to ditto what Ian said, actually. I agree with everything he said, and we need to know what you need so we can help you because we want the best for our students. So thank you for your presentation and the honest discussion.
Thank you, Bev. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome. Pleasure. I love being here.
Okay, Mr. Wheeler, come back next week.
Yeah, we'll get you. Yes, you're always welcome. There's a table over there. Yeah.
Dental visit with me.
Okay, Jamie.
All right, here we go. So Steve did answer a ton of questions, and I was trying to make a mental note rather of what your questions were so I can address them as best I can. So as we go along, but stop me. What? Or they have been addressed. I know, but
Can I
you're,
just say though?
no, please don't. We are such
I
partners.
hate my gut. I call her almost every single morning.
It's totally fine.
We truly have sister schools.
Yeah.
And I feel like a
You
lot
know.
of what we're working through,
Mhm.
we can just have a conversation. We
Yeah.
know what's going on because we're sharing
Yeah.
the same experience.
And the need is very
Yeah.
similar, so yet different too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. As far as scheduling, it was a creative situation this year to be able to really be able to get every need in there that you had to do, plus your magnet. And so that's why I kind of was, wow, when you asked that question, I really appreciated it. I think it was Bev that might have said it. I can't remember who said it, but so it was something that took a while and but it's working so far. So our enrollment, that is a moving enrollment all the time. So just know that we do have a 30% military population. So it is, we just actually had some new students come in today that I welcomed in. And with our preschool, that is also a moving number that changes. We students in all the time. We have a pre-K room as well with Mrs. Antezo. We do have a transitional kindergarten 1 class, and I've had to kind of shift my brain this year that it isn't a kindergarten, that it's more pre-K because I've had TK in my, with me for 7 years. So thankfully, such a great program. We do have the 2 academy classrooms. We have a K1 with 6 students this year and a 2-3 with 10 students to start the year. So we do have those 2 programs at our school. Each has a teacher in there and a social worker, as well as paras. Our 2-3 right now have 4 paras and our K1 have 2 paras in the program.
Jamie, real quick, what do you mean by academy program?
Yeah, so Beverly, it is the program that is a district program, and it has students that will have significant need for behavior, emotional, social support. So they are students that definitely benefit from that social worker who is there right away, and if they are having a dysregulation and need just extra support. So, yep. Does that help answer?
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
Okay, thanks. All right, so our student makeup, obviously, we have 50% free and reduced lunch or 27% special ed population. And it is interesting because we have had many new students start this year and many of them are coming with IEPs. So, which does increase that number. We do not have a significant EL population at Thames. Thankfully, we do have a tutor that comes in. This year we're sharing with CK. So we're able to meet that need right now. So we don't have a huge number. Our chronic absenteeism is trending down, which is fantastic. A lot of the same things that Steve is doing at his school. We send letters, we meet with families, we do positive incentives to get students in. We call them in the morning. We haven't had to make a home visit last year or this year yet, but thankfully, that hasn't happened, but we are excited for that. Our teacher attendance is good. I have a younger staff, so there are a lot of babies. So we've had maternity leave. So those are some of the absences. Trying to go through my questions that they asked to you, Steve. So our theme, I'm always excited to talk about our theme. We have the marine as well as environmental. We are very fortunate. This year, we are having a Project O educator at our site. I think we're the first school to have this happen, where they are here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they teach TK. We do have TK classes through grade 5, and we're doing that a cycle because in order to get them in. So it's 9 weeks. We're able to get in 3 of our grade levels. They take a 9-week break. 9 weeks back on, 9 weeks. And it coincides with the curriculum that they develop for us. It's project-based. And at the end of the year, they have an action project that goes along with it. And all of their lessons are really great. We decided to not partner this year with Nest, though we are partnered in a way. I just left it off, but it was through a grant that I wrote with them last year. So it's 1 year at this point where they're coming in and we're doing some field trips through them. But I decided to really go all in with Project O this year for our marine piece. And it's been fantastic. They've actually been able to come to some of our instructional data team meetings that we have with Ben Moon and really take a deeper dive into the science curriculum and know where teachers are teaching and be able to enhance that during the Project O lessons. So it's been excellent. I stuck that on, but it might not be in your handout. I had forgotten about our partnership with Mystic Aquarium. You might know the turtle is our mascot. So we do a terrific turtle program. It is fun. The kids love it. It's very educational. We did limit the amount of field trips though that we're able to do to the aquarium to 1 grade level, and otherwise they come in to our school. And we do that for preschool through 5. Project O also does some critter bins with our preschool because we do want to be able to offer the magnet to them as well. So the action projects, by the way, are the field trips. Those lead towards it. So each grade level will have an action project at the end of the year, whether it's, teaching about drainage, and they might have to paint the sewers. You've probably been at the school to see those beautiful sewers. And then they go out and possibly clean up a beach in kindergarten. So it depends on their action project. Our grade 1 build birdhouses to sustain that piece of it. So it's just really great connection for students to have at the end of the year. With the environmental part of it, our recycling is huge. We have a recycling night coming up November 12th. So if you want to come on by, last year we did collect 1,000 pounds of plastic bags. Very exciting. We have our bench. We're going to do it again. Yay. We get gardening. So Emma Rotner has a gardening enrichment. We have a plant sale at the end of the year, which was excellent because it made it sort of really real for students. You know what I mean? We grew these, let's sell them. Don't make a ton of money, but it's great. We bought a new hose with it. So it shows the profit. Composting and trails. We have a lot of signage now. Emma wrote a grant and we have these outstanding signs that students designed. So it shows like what is in our garden and our spaces and then along the trails. So we're going to have Enchanted Forest Night too coming up. So, okay.
Jay, can I ask a quick question if you don't mind?
Sure.
Jamie, each class goes on how many field trips a year?
Yeah, so with our Project O, it depends on the grade level, Bev. So grade 5 will have a couple more. Grade 4 go on a seal watch, but then they have their action project at the end. Whereas kindergarten will go to one of them, but then continue with the Project O throughout the year. But that's just for Project O. So with Nest this year, though, because it was built into, I asked them to please build in the busing into that. We built that grant this year with them to say how we wanted to use it. And we were able to get an additional field trip for Ness this year. Because it's really the busing cost for that piece of it to add on any. But I did a lot for all of that in the budget last year because I knew of Project O needing those field trips. And they're such a great experience for our students to have and necessary to go along with the project.
And Beverly, I'd
Thank-
like to add that in addition to our school field trips, that the district has funds in the operating budget for an assured experience at every grade level across the district. So all the Ks will go, I think it usually is to the farm,
Yeah.
first grade, second grade. So everybody gets to go to that aquarium trip at a certain grade level or Project O or
Yeah.
other things.
First grade goes to the aquarium. Fourth grade will also go this year to the aquarium because the aquarium comes in for the district for them. So I wanted to allot through our terrific turtle, grade 4 also going, because it'll make a nice connect for them. So,
Mike,
Jamie,
Yeah.
okay. How significant do you think the field trips are to the lives of your students?
I think very. We've only had great feedback. So grade 3 go out on the skiffs, those tiny boats to Pine Island, and they're there, they're seining. So it brings in so let me connect it to SBAC. I was going to get to it when we talked to science, but I'm happy to because obviously I'm a science school. But when we look at our data, which we're about to do, we meet, obviously, as Steve just sort of drilled down to you to say that, he looks at the data first. I then break it into the claims and then I share that out with the school data team. And when we looked at it, it was very interesting because life science was just a tinge less of students meeting or exceeding the standard, yet we spend so much time in life science. And so at that point, I'm saying, yes, the field trips are really important. It was now, let's look at those questions that are on the SBAC because they thrive in that piece of the science to then say, okay, is it a question? So we are really going to drill down this year to say, okay, what is it on SBAC that they're not demonstrating because they're living it in these field trips. So they come back and are just, one student who had never seen a horseshoe crab and came back and wrote about it, drew about it. It was fantastic, actually. So we really welcome the answer. So no, they're very beneficial.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Sure.
all right, so I'm going to recognize Mike.
Oh, thank you. I
Okay.
think it's mostly been answered. It sounds like every student gets to go out of school for a field trip each year.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good.
So,
Right.
all right.
Ian and then Adrian.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of to pile on there. Again, my own educational experience and then my own professional experience, field trips, yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
Greatly needed, greatly beneficial. Any sort of immersive educational experience and whatever you have to do to engineer a curriculum-based outcome out of that, I'm all in favor, like all for it. I like the idea of the assured experience. I remember going up to elementary school myself, like we knew certain years, like that was the year you're gonna go to a certain place. And so it's a thing that kids look forward to.
Yeah.
And I still remember a number of field trips that I went on as a kid. Yeah, 100%.
Excellent.
So, thank you.
Great. Yeah, no, Project O has been an amazing partner with us. So, go
Adrian.
ahead.
I
Oh,
was
sorry.
Also bounce off the field trip thing and maybe it'd be worth saying the need because we know that children of high need
Mhm.
see less of these things at
Mhm.
home.
Yeah.
And your school has a lot of high needs children.
Yes.
So some of us who have kids here may have taken their kids to the aquarium, but I'm guessing that a lot of parents in your school may not have.
Nope.
And so this is the exposure
Mhm.
to the aquarium for them.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. They don't even go to the beach. Some students haven't living so close to the beach, but they don't get that experience. So no, it is true. Yeah.
Swimming,
What is it?
swimming.
We don't do
Sometimes
swimming, I
kids don't
know.
go to the beach because they don't know how
Yeah.
to swim.
Yeah.
And parents may not know how to teach them.
Mhm.
So that, I don't know, that's sort of maybe a aspirational goal, something to think about.
Maybe there'll be a swimming pool with fields.
Yeah.
Why don't you have
Put it up there with-
Yeah,
an
could you
indoor
get that,
swimming pool?
Yeah.
that on the list?
Yeah, but I just want to circle back and make one comment because you talked about how does SBAC cover it? You know, what's missing on the SBAC and, you know, again, we're in a weird spot because.
Not so much what's missing or
Right.
what we've missed in a question, because they know the life science, they've proven it, they've done it, they're hands-on. It's more of a, what did we miss within a question to be able to show that their knowledge through SBAC
Right,
is
right.
basically.
And that's just highlights something I've talked about before, and it's one of those the gaps that is not covered by data. You know, data just can't capture it because you have standardized tests, but we provide differentiated instruction. And also, like, you know, some of the most beneficial educational experiences are the immersive things, the intangibles.
Yep.
Where there's a lot of takeaway, and you can see it, the change in the student and the comprehension, the integrated comprehension that comes from, like, you know, those immersive experiences. It's hard to translate into data specifically.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we always need to kind of keep in mind as we look at these numbers.
Yeah.
A lot has to be said with like just the progression of the student. And also like I think we maybe at some point need to think about how do we capture some sort of assessment that is more holistic,
Mm.
you know, and show the growth of a student as an individual. And their just overall capabilities. And
Mhm. Yeah.
thank you for what you do. And I'm glad to hear that Ness is not off the board.
No, we grappled, I have to tell you, because Ness has been with us, well, with me, even Claude. And so it was one of these, I met with Megan Strand and was, you know, it was hard, but I had to sort of weigh that out. And so, but I was so thrilled that we could continue another year.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, as someone who spent a good bit of their professional life sailing
Yeah.
and getting, you know, paid to sail, it's a great opportunity. And it's just, you know, as far as physics go, like there's no better instructor
Mhm.
than just, you know, the ocean and wind.
Yeah.
and a boat.
Yep. I concur with that. It's the best. Not for anything, Steve. Okay. So before we get into this too, I wanted to talk about the school data team because you had question about teachers and being able to have a voice. And one thing that we looked at our data last year as far as the climate survey is teacher-led committees. And so we have revamped that somewhat. I always took it on because I didn't want to put something else on a teacher, but we were like, oh, absolutely. So this year they are co-chairing. I'm obviously co-chairing a few of them, but when we went to go do some of these goals and looking at this, some of this went to those committees disseminated and teachers came back with the goals. So I just wanted to share, we are doing a lot of teacher-led committees, so they are getting that voice. Yeah. Okay, so looking at our ELA, we did go up almost 3% to 0.68 from the year prior. So I was really happy with that. And our cohort from 4th to 5th did go up. Math, on the other hand, we did not. We did go down 1.91%, but what was nice was that I talked about this with science, but we drilled down to claims. So our claim 3, our communication and reasoning, really was our focus last year because that's pretty much what you want for your students to be able to communicate their thinking and their reasoning. That one, we did move students in from approaching and move those students up. So I was really happy with that when we did go ahead and look at it. Obviously not happy that we went down a percentage, but I was happy with that movement as well. So questions about that? Go ahead.
How do teachers feel about the math curriculum?
I guess it would depend, right? Because we're trying to marry two of them together and sometimes that can pose some challenges, but our math specialists are there to help with it. I know you were talking about math need or needs of our building, and it would be sensational to have extra supports for math. So we have 2 math specialists, but like almost a math, we know tutors, of course, but even like another additional math interventionist or something, because we have literacy specialists, and literacy interventionists, but we don't have a math interventionist. So as far as you feel about math, what do you mean by that? Like, honestly, like feel.
Well, we've seen that math hasn't been great district-wide for the last few years. And is it something that the curriculum committee should maybe look at? Do we have the right tools? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has been looked at quite a bit. And taking a deeper dive into it's always beneficial. Teachers have voiced, right, how they're feeling about it. And so, but it's always a work in progress. I think also with something like this, I want to highlight a little bit about our math because when I went to it, if you just slide to the next, thank you. When we went to it, actually, this is ELA. Can I hold for math for a second and just talk about ELA for 2 minutes? Because I want to highlight something for ELA and I was really excited. If you see our 37% exceeding for our ELA in grade 5, I was super excited about that. One thing that last year for ELA that we did, we always push into the tier 1, but we ended up really breaking into almost phonics rotations too, and really meeting needs for 4 and 5 to see some of those gaps. And that did benefit. And so I was very excited for that when we did have that increase and that bump up. And one thing too, you were talking about growth targets. We had 34% of our high achievers really show high growth. And that sometimes is really hard to do when you're at that high level to make that much growth. So I was super excited about that. And also we had 22% of our low achieving make high growth. We're talking like 110% growth. So I was super excited about that. And we do have 28% of a SPED population taking this assessment last year. So I was excited for this gain. And it's not just SPED that's there too. We do have tier 3, about 20% tier 3 students for ELA. So we know obviously that those interventionists are working really, really hard. And last year we did have any LA tutor. So, but I just wanted to highlight that quickly before we did move to math. So for math, it is something that we're constantly really drilling down. So to your point, Ian, though, we did have 27%. I was very excited with high achievement, high growth. So that was really great. But we also had 20% low achieving high growth. So though we are moving within those bands, because you were talking about the approaching, I don't remember who was saying it. I think it was you, Beverly, who was saying, we talk about it each year, but within that band, we are moving them closer and closer because it is a focus that we really do work on every time we come back in from the fall, because you're going to have that regression over the summer. So we hit them right away to hopefully get them back up. So one other thing I just wanted to add about this, because we were talking about, sort of the different grade levels. When we were looking at that communication and reasoning claim 3, it does change from grade 3 to multiple choice for a student to say how they did solve a problem pick from these choices to 4 and 5, where they do have to type out and explain in written form. So it does change a little bit on that percentage. So it is a slight shift, just to give you a little
And
perspective.
we've talked a lot about making sure that we have that time in math to verbalize and communicate those ideas, but then
Yeah.
to write them down. So
Yeah.
to really do what they're doing on the assessment is also a good way
Yeah.
for them to really reason,
Mhm.
hear others reasoning,
Mhm.
and really think it deep thoughts and understand better.
Yeah. It'll be a trend you hear when I go to do our action steps, but do you have more questions on math? I just want to make sure I'm sort of,
No, I just wanted to make sure that we had the
yeah,
right, that we were starting with the right tools.
yeah.
I do have a
Go
question.
ahead.
This is actually for both. But just in general, and this may actually be a broader question for the curriculum committee, but I'm just curious to know, like, when it comes to, delivering the math and are the teachers held to a rigid set of resources that they could use to say they have some students that are particularly struggling with certain concepts, like, say fractions, decimals, percents, are the teachers able to maybe like reach out to find alternative resources that maybe could present the information and the practices in different ways that, could appeal to different types of learners?
So our teachers are amazingly teachers, right? So they're going to pull out their different manipulatives that they have. They're going to visualize, they're going to draw for students. So not so much a different resource, but they're going to use a different strategy to layer on and scaffold for them. And I know Steve's the same way. Our specialists will also, when they pull those small groups in, they completely will drill down and make sure that any gap is there in any shape or form can be filled. But as far as like pulling in other resources, it's more of a teaching strategy that they could then use. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Okay. All right.
Maybe saying the same thing in
Yeah.
different words.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So science, really excited for our growth in science. We increased 10%. In our science from last year or the previous year. Very excited for that. And, you know, it's a different set of students though. So that always is one thing for science. So we improved 10% with a different set of students, but we are very excited for that. One thing, we obviously used the SBAC IEBs and our teachers last year used them for their assessments. So it was really interesting to see so that they didn't, obviously they always have them for teaching tools, but last year they did use them for a lot of those teaching, like assessments for them. So, and then they also created last year unit assessments with Ben. So those end of the year, and they did provide those too, so that students were getting that practice and they were based on SBAC style questions. So we were really happy about that. And as I said, we kind of looked at each of those different claims or standards really for science and to meet them. And we took a lot of time making connections through the curriculum. Go ahead, to tie it into literacy. Go ahead.
Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting this. I find it encouraging that for ELA, for math, and then next gen science, that over half of the students are meeting or exceeding standards. So that's great to see. And also that you're seeing growth
Yeah.
through the years as well.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. It is because we were so new that we weren't able to even track, right? It's some of the students. So it's been exciting to be able to have that growth. So. All right. So, our climate goals. So we meet, you know, with our SEL team every week, but last year at the end of the year, similar to Steve, we looked at our, overall climate, data, and that came from the survey. And then we really drilled down, and these are the goals that we put in our school improvement plan this year. And we're going to be continuing one. So you see in the first box, the climate goal that we're going to focus on this year. But then the one that we continued on is that trusted adult. We did improve. We increased, I believe it was 80% that we went up. Our 3, 4, 5 were more of a target for us this coming year. Our littles were pretty good. But our 3, 4, 5, we want to increase them even further. So we're working towards that. But we're also very similar, Steve. That's funny. I was seeing it that the hearing kind words, we want to increase that to a lot. It's on a scale of never, sometimes, or a lot. So we really want to bump that up for our students. And some of our action steps, you'll see we have, so we do these shout outs. So we give students, we recognize them for either using kind words or being a really great citizen. And this year we said all staff. Last year it was more teachers that were giving them. And this year we're like, no, let's just expend every teacher or every staff member needs to be able to give a shout out. And we've had even building subs or, you know, tutors that we have and paras giving those. And then I announce them every Friday. It's a long list, which is great, but we do announce those and they do like it. And then we also started our Turtly Awesome class. I know you have to do it though, and it's really cute. We also announce those on, and they love it. You know, it's great, and we've given many of those already. That was new this year, and it was again something that came from our Safe School Climate Committee, and they're the ones that are writing these goals, and then we bring it to our school improvement plan. So second step, that's our tier 1. We're able to really use those as springboard conversations when they teach those. And then health lessons, of course, with our PE teacher. And we got creative this year and put PE as an enrichment time in order to give more time within the schedule, even though it's not an enrichment, it's a necessary curriculum, but it allowed for a more creative schedule. DESA data. So that's what the teachers actually just completed 2 weeks ago. No, the 6th. And we really use a lot of that. And we've done it this year where it's like whole class. You can see trends down to individual students to see how they're doing, what's an area we can focus on to set goals for a student. Go ahead.
Just for everyone that might be watching or
Yeah.
later, can you just explain a little bit more about DESA Day?
Yeah. So DESA, don't ask me what the acronym stands for. I feel really horrible. Do you know what the
We can
acronym
Google
is? Yeah, no,
We'll
seriously, I'm
Google that.
trying to
It's our
think about what it
universal
it's
SEL
through Aperture.
screener.
Yeah, I
The
think,
Devereaux, strength assessment.
I
There's a
know.
couple other words in there. But
yeah. So a teacher will fill out a short questionnaire, 1 minute, 2 minutes on each student. And then it comes on a scale if they're in need. They might have some need or typical, or they're, above. And what's nice about that is those students that are above, we might say, okay, we could even use those as role models and mentors for other students, though we use every student to do things like that as well. But really what we're looking for are those students that are in that need to be able to make sure that either they're hooked with the social worker, we have a plan for them, and what areas within, did you look it up for him? Thank you. What areas within the scale 2 we can then target, because it might not be all of the areas that we have to target. So that's what we do. Yeah, it's another data point that
And
we
the
can.
DESA data links to those units in second step.
Mhm.
So we're really
Yeah.
excited about that. So
Right.
they directly link and you can have those lessons for the
Mhm.
kids.
And there are lessons within it. So, yep. Whole school meetings, similar to Steve, we use role models for that. And we have Splash of the Month where we recognize them, and it's a different characteristic each month. So this month is responsibility. And then we always are promoting our mission of belong. We use it in conversations. If a student might, not make a great choice, we might, bring that mission back in. So we're constantly living it. It's always on morning announcements. It is just something that we really feel strongly about, to belong. All right. So my focus area, so as I said, you're going to see a theme there, and these goals were set by our school data team. And the trend there really is that communication, right? It's what you want for your student to be able to communicate what they are thinking in varied forms. So our first one for literacy, obviously we're talking about writing and about fiction and nonfiction text. And then also, we have an oral reading fluency goal this year. So we looked a lot at different data and how we can measure K-5, and the fluency will help build comprehension or help with that comprehension. And it's very interesting because in the past, we hadn't been rating our 4, 3, 4, 5 with their fluency. And we have this year, and we're seeing that as a little bit of a need. So we want to be able to track that too. And we've already seen real improvements with some of the progress monitoring we're doing. For math, same thing. We want them to be able to back up why they're using a certain reason for their math solutions. And we're looking at that depending on what they're representing, but words, models, or numbers. And then science, same exact thing. We based it on our high quality science instruction that Ben had, where it is, again, communicating the reasoning through those varied representations. So. And then there's our action steps. So we're doing a lot more than this as far as our action steps are concerned. I mean, obviously we're doing instructional data teams where, so we are pushing into classrooms, but these are ones that are focusing completely on the goals that you're seeing here. So wit and wisdom, they really are one area here that we're able to hone in on that student discourse. And it's a fancy term there, Socratic seminars. And Think, Pair, Share, and Turn and Talk will definitely benefit how they're going to be able to communicate their ideas out. And it's a lot of guided conversation though. And even in the writing form, they have sentence starters to be able to help them. I think this because they definitely need that help. The writing tasks, based on text, and they're doing things called like FAQs. So they have to have almost compare and contrast different books, and it's a focus question, and then they have to answer it. Have you seen those? Yeah, they're pretty involved. But we are tying in our curricular area. Susan mentioned social studies, wit and wisdom grade 5 specifically tie in a lot of our social studies curriculum, which is really nice to have that. And then they're bringing in just a small group. I was in a small group today, literacy intervention, and she was talking about Lewis and Clark, brought in an article for them to then delve deeper into it, but then meet the need of their reading ability. Trying to think about where I leave off. Yeah. Oh, practice fluency. So that's an area that I actually witnessed today too. They were doing a lot of choral reading, that echo reading. When the teacher will say it, they repeat it back so that they can build that fluency. And that's K-5. They're working on this with those multisyllabic words for our students. And then we move into math. So again, really working towards building that reasoning for them to be able to verbally and in written form to go for an efficient model. So students may have like a really big way of solving a problem and you want to bring them back in, acknowledge their wonderful way, but then bring them into more of an efficient way of doing it. So we started doing what we call a communication and reasoning warm up, and it's before the mini lesson and before a number string, and it's really quick. So they may hold up two models and say, why is this volume less than this volume? And a student has to turn and talk, discuss it quickly, and then come up with their reasoning just to warm them up and also loop back to spiral back to a topic that they might have already moved on from. And then applying those number strings. So number strings, I think you are familiar with it, where it builds a pattern. The teacher will start and they have an equation and then they build upon the pattern. And then not to leave it, to use some of those strategies that they did within the number string, either in small group or then depending on what the students are working on in whole group. IABs, I talked about those quite a bit. Actually, we met last week in our literacy IDT meetings, instructional data team meeting. And we decided on starting one that is new this year, and it's on inferencing, which is fantastic because they built those in. We had some on inferencing before, but they're newer ones, which we're happy to do. So those will be used as not only obviously instructional, but those testing or teaching tools. And then for science, so we really delve deep, as you just heard, about with science with Project O, and we're using the mystery science, which is phenomenal. We were able to get those kits this year. Those are great. So teachers can have those amazing investigations and experiments in class, and they just pluck out all the materials they need, and it's really great. So that's the plan for me. Questions? Or did Steve answer them all for you?
Yeah, we really,
Good job,
really
Jane.
put Steve through. his paces.
You need to get him a coffee tomorrow.
I know. Thank you, Steve, for going first. I'll go first next year. Go ahead. I did.
Yeah, next
year.
No, I just wanted to express my appreciation for both of you and the thoroughness of your presentation and your willingness to engage in conversation. And, you know, I commend you for taking the notes on the fly as you did.
Yeah, I was
because
trying. I was
You did pretty much cover all the questions that came out of Steve's conversation, so appreciate that.
good.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much all set for now. Otherwise, I just wanted to commend you both for taking the time and putting the effort in. Thank you.
So I'm going to recognize Adrian, then Beverly. Mike did have to leave for another appointment, but he's going to Zoom in and listen to the rest of this. So he's excused absence. Okay.
Yeah.
So parent involvement.
Yes.
Do we have,
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of parent involvement in there is there as far as trying to like supplement education, which I know is difficult.
Yeah. You mean as far as coming in and helping to with small groups or?
Specifically, the Dibbles assessments, you had mentioned that you were just going over that data now. Did we send those results to all the parents in your school?
This coming week. So teachers will give them at conferences in case there's questions. So we want to make sure that if there is, that a teacher can address it, especially with our 4-5s, because it will be new information coming to them. And our literacy specialists will be there ready to go, our team, and just in case there's like additional that they need to ask, because conferences are so short that, you know, you want to make sure you get to all of the different subjects, but those are going with a letter that Anne-Marie drafted literally Wednesday. Yeah.
Putting it up the board notes, so you
So
all
for-
get that
For
too.
parents that aren't in those, which I know
Yeah.
there are a lot of parents that.
We actually have a high turnout, which is
We do,
great.
yeah.
And if they don't, then teachers will outreach to them. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
those results will get home.
Yep.
And do you
Yes.
send I know Dibbles actually puts together a sheet on saying, work with this and this and this and your child, with your child. I mean, it seemed great when I was reading through it. Do you guys send that home?
I'm trying to remember what the actual report looks like that we printed for Wednesday. I know, I'm trying to remember if it has that piece on there.
We can
Well,
add
You
it to the-
sometimes want to,
It's specific for child to child.
You know, I'm
like
trying to
where
it
your
is.
Child was
Mhm.
lower in, whatever, X, Y, and Z.
I know.
For this, try doing this with your child at home. It
Right.
seemed like
Yeah.
free resource, which requires a print.
Yep. Yeah.
That we can give to parents and say, yeah, your child was, down lacking.
Right.
In this category, but
I know.
help us and, see if you can work with this stuff at home.
Right.
It is, that site is powerful. There's so much to do with it. I'm talking about the site that pulls that Dibbles data out. I don't recall, I have to be honest with you, Adrian, I apologize for that, what that sheet right now looks like. You sometimes would, I'm just trying to think about a parent at home that might be overwhelmed with that. That's the only thing that you would want the teacher to guide them through and say, okay, here's how you might be able to do it, because they may not be able to understand, but I'll have to look back at that and,
I think I've sent it.
yeah, I know.
Everybody with lots of stuff.
I can't remember what the,
I can help.
no, it's good resources. Yeah. I have to tell you too, that sometimes our teachers in literacy will use that, what a parent can do. It also in small groups, because it is handy, but I would love for the person to have that communication with the parent first before it just goes home and says, try this, unless it's comprehensive or a parent feels comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
So,
We actually
yeah.
use that with our EL tutors,
Mhm.
Adrian, as
Yeah.
another resource
Yeah.
levels where they go in and they're able to supplement that. Piggybacking on top of what the
Mm.
kids are doing, in remedial reading services.
Yeah.
So it's worth its gold in that, I think, for sure. I want to
It is, I
piggyback
know,
on
I'm
that
trying to
with
remember.
parents. I don't know that,
Yeah.
I don't know how articulate or clear that was. but I
Microphone,
do think
sorry.
that There's a bit of a.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a gap in terms of just making sure parents really understand what it is
Mhm.
they're looking at. And if it's
Yeah.
suggesting to do this at home or that at home, do they really know
Right.
what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't recall if it's on that exact sheet. Of course, I wrote it down. I have to go look tomorrow. Yeah.
I mean, you probably know, my wife's a first grade teacher.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
She does the dibble. She's been doing it for a few
Mhm.
years. And she sends that sheet home and she thinks it's great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that all the parents read it, but
Mhm.
some might.
And that's why we do it at
Help is
conferences.
Good.
Do you know what I mean? That's why you want it there for them to see it. That's, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the concern would be that, there's a gap between conferences and
Mhm.
the assessments, right?
Exactly. So what happened is our literacy specialist did go and show our teachers how to administer a progress monitoring, so that this way they can get more up to date. So like if there is, because they did it first couple of weeks of school. So what we did then is make sure that we had some updated data for a parent to say, nope, they look at this, they've already made progress. And we've seen some really good progress so far.
All right, and then one other question.
Mhm.
Same one that I asked.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
so, speaking for your teachers.
Yeah.
5 years to make huge gains, what do they need? What do you
Yeah.
think they need?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a 5-year, but right now I concur with Steve, is we do have a bigger population of special ed students. And if you're looking for our 3, 4, 5s, it's interesting that this cohort right now it's a larger population of special ed students. So I think, and we share a special ed teacher. I think that piece of it would be great to have additional supports. And I just said, as far as our math, because that is something right now, we have 2 specialists and 1 tutor who right now is actually acting as a long-term sub. Amazingly, which is great for her, but it sometimes gives a harder ship for us to then have that filled. We're piecing it together, thankfully, with some retired teachers who are amazing to come in and help us. But another math person would be outstanding for our building. Yeah.
And any other supports that you can, so I know we talked about when we were going over the budget
Mhm.
and building subs. There was lots of discussion on that they actually are more than just a day sub. They're tremendously more, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, we cut a lot of building subs,
Mhm.
which, was bothersome,
Yeah.
but did that have a big effect?
With us, it's more of getting applicants really at this point, because we have building sub vacancies that we need to fill. And it's sometimes getting the applicant to come in is always a hard one for us. Another need, and I know I'm probably speaking for Steve too, possibly, but any supports for SEL would be outstanding. We have a big population of students who access our social worker, and that part of it would be another area of need, but it's hard. So,
I definitely will share what they're asking for.
yeah,
You can take a look.
I know.
I'm happy to share.
Well, maybe this.
Well, yeah, I know, we will.
Maybe
we
this is a
should.
good time to just, does the board feel that we should just receive the site budgets directly?
I,
Well, I have to look at them
Yeah.
first. So
Yeah.
let me look at them first. and then I can forward them to them.
Well, but if I may.
Well, we've got a number of people that want to speak. And I do realize you have big schools you need to work on. We really appreciate your coming out tonight, spending the time, but I know you have to be up early, so I don't want to keep you all night. But Bev does have her hand up. Jen had something she wanted to say as well. Bev?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jamie, for your presentation. I just heard what you said. Are you saying that you could use another social worker?
I mean, Bev, I'd have to, obviously, that would be ideal, right? Wonderful to have that piece of it. But as far as like prioritizing, I was just saying, as far as the needs in our building, I don't know. Yeah. So, right now, our social worker works so closely too with our academy social workers. So it's a nice team. And our school psych as well. We have 2 SEL tutors, but it's just another need in the building that I was just sharing out that we do definitely have, students who require extra supports in that social emotional realm. We also have a counselor for a school-based health center, but it's sort of a different need that she serves, which is outstanding, of course, but it's just a different need that they help with. So
Don't be bashful, Jamie. I know you're not bashful. So if you need something, let us know. And that's going to be my next question. How could the board be a help to your school to move students forward and to help the staff?
yeah, it's similar to what Steve said as far as like supporting the budget. So once we do submit to Susan and Anne Marie and to Irene to be able to then help us with that and moving that forward. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Do the parents know that we went to Wit and Wisdom?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, they
Oh,
do.
that they do know. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
We're actually planning on a follow-up piece though to that with some photos and some, tips on the way that kids are
Mhm.
learning. So we're definitely going to do that and some family literacy nights.
Oh, yeah. Yep. In March is when we kind of do those, but also we sent out things through Parent Square as far as giving information about it and the different topics. So, yeah.
Okay. You do family literacy night in March?
We do because it's Read Across America. We kind of we stagger our nights. So we have our recycling night and then we'll do concerts. We have an enchanted forest, depending on, we're going to be having in January stargazing. And so it depends on sort of the months we kind of stagger it out, but it's a nice theme to have because it's Read Across America. We do a big thing with like Spirit Week and that kind of thing. So.
Okay. What do you do? What kind of nights do you have at the beginning of the school year?
Yeah, so we're about to have our recycling night because it's World or National Recycling Day. And so that's our biggest one. And it does take coordination. The students are making different carnival games out of recycled items. So that's our biggest one. It's very cute. Yeah. And we do have community members come in for that. Project Joe will be there for that. We're actually having the town or the city come in, give some information of how they recycle there. So.
You don't think literacy nights would be more beneficial in the beginning of the school year as opposed to in March?
Yeah, we could. It's a matter of just then coordinating it, but it would be beneficial, I guess, both times. We just want to make sure that teachers and parents are going to be coming. We're finding, depending on the theme of the night, we want to make sure it's really well organized and being able to meet that need. And it is exciting when it's around another theme, if that makes sense, because that's all.
It makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Sure. Oh, sure.
So I'm going to recognize Jen and then
Thank you as well for sticking it out with all of our questions.
Steve says he loves to be here.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes.
when Bev's better, we had talked initially that the two of us would, and whoever else would like to join, that we would be wanting to visit both of your schools. I have a question. So we just approved something where it's allowing for, I believe it was 3 extra field trips. Is that going to help with your decision with moving forward with Ness? Was field trips one of your deciding factors?
No.
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 Okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes. So it was teacher feedback. for us. And we absolutely, as I said, Ness has been part of, you know, from the very beginning, probably the past 11 years for me. So it was hard to do, but I needed to weigh it out, and scheduling for teachers, as well as what we were having was AmeriCorps representatives come in, which was outstanding and great, but they were different each year. And so they're not the same sort of lessons that our Project O educators were able to deliver. So I wanted to make sure to respect teachers, respect the schedule, while again, you know, meeting the needs of our students through the magnet. So it was it was grappling for us. We didn't have field trips for Ness. They actually, that would have been an added cost, but Ness was through AmeriCorps for us. So it was a different type of situation. So
Yeah, I just wanted to understand.
yeah,
It was due to like financial constraints, and so thank you.
sure. Yeah.
Ian,
Well, at some point, I think I might want to follow up. I don't want to belabor the point now, but I would want to follow up on to get more understanding about the Nest situation and the AmeriCorps and all that.
Yeah.
And what, if there is a way moving forward that, some sort of sail instruction or, and even like swim instruction can be brought into, the Thames River Magnet School.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to echo what Bev was saying as far as, just instinctually, like I think maybe we should look at some way we can look at family literacy night to happen on the front end of the school year. As everyone was talking, I actually just was writing that down as Bev got to the point was that March seems a little late.
Yeah, we did it just for the theme.
Yeah,
It was-
understood,
yeah.
understood. And having it multiple times throughout the year, not a bad thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and with a new program, like it'd be great to have that as an introduction. And I definitely also wanted to express some support for what Adrian said as far as like finding a way to incorporate the DIBELS prescriptives as part of the report that parents receive in whatever form or fashion that seems reasonable and measured. And also just to circle back to the other question about the board, getting a look at the direct requests, one of the things that we're working on is looking at how the budget procedure is done. And one of the, we're looking at the town as a model, and we're trying to like reform the way we do our budget deliberations in a more department by department type basis. And one of the things that the town does for the municipal budget is that they have, when you open up the big book, there's the town manager is recommended, but included with that is the department head's request. So if there is an adjustment made, we see the adjustment, the town council sees their adjustment on their end. I'm saying on the Board of Ed side, I think that would be a good thing for us to have. And that's something I'm going to continue to advocate for as we, reformat how we do our budget, is that we should be able to see the direct requests coming from department heads and site administrators. And if there's an adjustment made by the superintendent and the business manager, so be it. That's all fair. And we should be able to see what that adjustment is and make a decision, an informed decision between the two. Again, very much akin to what you see the town council do with all the municipal departments. Sometimes they lean towards the department head's request, sometimes they lean towards the town manager's recommended number, or, they find a middle in between. So, I would encourage this board to consider that moving forward.
Beverly, do you have another question?
I just wanted to, because I
Uh,
wrote that
Statement?
report.
Yeah, I do. I heard Mike Whitney say that he's encouraged because 50% of our students meet or exceed standards, but I'm still concerned that over 40% of our students do not. So again, Jamie and Steve, whatever we can do to help you push those students forward, and I know you try your hardest, really. I really appreciate everything you do. But whatever the board can do, and I should just speak for myself, but I know the board feels the same way because we're all interested in students and moving them forward. Whatever we can do, please, please, please do not hesitate to come forward and tell us. Please, we're here for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And
And Ian, I will make sure I see that report because it's bothering me because I can't visualize it right now with what's on that. So I gotta
I'm
make
going
sure.
to
I have it.
recognize Mike.
I agree with that just said, and the encouraging part to me was that unlike the some other sets of numbers that we had half meeting or exceeding that more than had to come up to standard. But I do want to see us continue to grow, as I think we all do. Thanks.
All right, and I'll recognize Dean. You
Thank
bet.
you. Two things. One, something I thought of, and the other one I thought of again when Ian mentioned how the budget's structured. Yeah, frankly, that's what I was used to. You know, on the council, which is you see the police department makes a request, you see the town manager, what he gave or didn't give. So you have an idea of what the real, where all the lights shine and everything. My question, and I know there's no answer to it tonight, and that is this. We look at the number, presumably when we get the numbers, you know, we get these, you know, percentages, does not mean approaching needs, exceeds and all of that. Presumably these are useful measures with qualifications, of course. So, you know, in general, we say, okay, we see some improvement, great, not great, you know, optimistic, hopefully we'll move forward next year. We watch the cohorts and all of that. This is just maybe my imagination, but there should be a day when we get our numbers. And while we can't realistically expect all students, what would be, we say we're moving, we want to make progress. I don't think we want to make eternal progress. We want to get the school system to a point where we're doing it, right? So we're not doing it today, but at some point we'll be doing it. What would, and again, you don't have to have an answer for this right now, what would we're doing it look like? All kids are exceeding expectations or 98% or something like that. So that's the first part of it. The second part is, all right, if that's our goal, a realistic goal, what resources are necessary to get there? And is that practical, of course, but what resources do we need to get there? Because, and I haven't been doing this for very, very long. It just seems like every year it's, we're getting a little better. We're getting a little better. And I'm thinking by the time I'm in my grade, it's maybe we're going to get meets and exceeds, you know, most of our students are going to be in the meets and exceeds level. It just feels like sometimes, and I'm not blaming anybody. It just, you know, you have what you have to work with. It's like walking, you know, barefoot with chewing gum sometimes. So I know it's frustrating for people that are trying to do the job and get it done. But I want us to have an idea at some point of what is nirvana? Where are we going with this ultimately? What's, you know, otherwise we're going to be looking at fractions of percentage like I'm doing here, like an idiot. You know, we moved up 1%, we moved up 2%, we moved up 2.5%. You know, how do we get, you know, most everybody into, you know, like I said, nirvana or wherever we're trying to head.
The ideal steady state.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
we're doing the job. So nobody can say, well, you know, we could do better. You could always do a little better. We have to do a lot better. I don't know what that is, though. I don't know what that looks like. That's more of a statement than anything else.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Denise,
Appreciate it.
for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much.
Very much. I
And just think
appreciate
that the
We're here
next
every Monday night.
principals,
it.
So feel free.
yeah, and just think that the next principals, it'll be half as long, or maybe a quarter as long, because you've answered all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Good night.
Oh, yeah, like,
Oh, Mike, was your hand still up or?
Oh, the above.
I got it.
Bye.
All right, so,
Yeah, it's just-
thank you. Okay, sure. We'll talk about you while you're gone. Yeah, you can watch it later. You can watch it later. Get the transcript. All right. So,
I want to get Anne Marie kind of on the road because she has. over
Right,
an
I
hour drive,
know,
but
she
She's
has a-
gonna pull up the original one that you all received. We'll just take a look at that. This isn't the beginning and the end of talking about calendar, but this, I mean, it is the beginning.
right,
It's not the end.
right.
So this is just the original based on the regional calendar that we got from Learn. And we all talked about it. We kind of voted on it. There's a few tweaks, changes that are a little different. There are some people who are taking 2 full weeks off in December for Christmas across the region. the GEA even asked if that could be possible because there's a day and a half or 2 days there that aren't that are coming to school, and we're worried because military is taking off. There's 1,000 military children, and I guess the sub base has a full week. So there could be families traveling during that time.
Yep.
Even starting the year with kids, I think we're a day off because we like to get our 3 days in. So when everybody gets back, we can kind of take a look at this, but it is based on the regional calendar. And the reason it is, it's financial because we have to run buses for all of our magnet schools that we send kids to, whether it's the regional multicultural through Learn and marine science through Learn, or the Ledyard VOAG or the New London schools. So it does cost us money if they're going to school and we're not. So that's an extra day that we're doing buses for them,
Hmm.
or or vice versa. So
So if we were, and again, we're not making any decisions tonight,
No.
we're just kind of brainstorming and then we'll vote on this at a
Right.
future meeting,
but
but
if you have any
if-
suggestions, you'd like to see the calendar, for
Yep.
instance, if you want to see the calendar with 2 weeks in December, I can
Right.
provide you another alternative.
yeah, I'd like
show
to
you
see
what that
with the
would look like.
22nd, 23rd off. Now you're saying that number one, the military base takes that
Yeah.
full 2 weeks.
Yep.
But you're saying that currently this matches the regional calendar or?
Mhm.
Okay, so we'd be out the outlier if we took those 2 days away. So then we have to figure out where we're going to make them up.
Well,
So
yeah, or if we end the year even later.
Jen,
When I had initially looked at this, when you guys sent the paperwork over, I was gonna recommend, taking that Monday, Tuesday off because of the military traveling. And even not just the military, regular families who, have, who may want to travel during that time period. And for our teachers, right? That's like a nice 2 full
It's a nice
weeks of.
break. Yeah,
That's a nice 2 full weeks of reprieve, right?
yeah.
And I will use, so, whether you start one day early in August and one day in, late in June, that's what I was sort of thinking. But whatever you guys, like however you want to fix where you would find those 2 days is fine, but that was my suggestion.
Ian,
I'm similar in thought to Jen, but also I think just in general, yeah, if there's a representation of this that could show like the flex options.
Yep.
Like an arrow or, whatever, that would be great to kind of get the sense of like the full range. But yeah, I don't think, going a bit later in June, if that's what it takes to have like a more accommodating break in the middle of the year, then, I think people would be willing to make that trade. But travel times around the holidays can be cumbersome.
Yeah, you're right. Also, notice that we end on the 12th. So depending on snow days the following week, June 19th is not a day to have graduation. So even to be determined, depending on how the weather prevails, how far out we go. But let's say we're able to graduate them on Thursday, the 18th, or maybe Saturday, the 20th, or maybe earlier in the week. It's kind of been tradition on a Friday.
it's always been, but haven't we had some
Saturday
suggestions about a
morning.
Saturday being
think
easier for families?
Some people have mentioned that, and also like I know that other high schools in the region do that
Yeah,
specifically,
I don't know that I'd get as many teachers as I have. That's the only
Yeah.
thing. They do love coming. And many will, even if it's on a Saturday, but
Mm.
just thinking ahead of that, we don't have to make that decision now.
right.
But just, knowing that.
and again, we're not going to set the graduation date. But when can we legally do that again? Is it in, oh, you can now? Okay, it
But
used to
would you have
be,
to change it if we had snow days? If we didn't make it?
As long as you know the 180th day of school,
okay,
you can do it.
okay, I thought for some reason we had to wait
They just-
until
they
the law
just
changed.
changed it.
Oh, they changed it again? Okay. Okay,
Well,
Well,
we
then
go
maybe we should just set it-
181 days with students, so contact with students for our teachers and their contract is 181 days, but there have been times when we, let's say the kids were gonna end on a Monday and we let them end on the Friday and then the teachers do a PD day at the end. So there've been a couple years we've done that.
Yeah, but heck, if we can set the graduation date at the time of the calendar, that takes away all the drama and allow
Yeah.
people to plan.
I think that'd be great, but anyway.
Yeah.
The early dismissal, is that for parent teacher conferences? Is that district wide?
Yes.
Is Fitch doing parent teacher conferences?
I don't know if no, I don't think they do it formally, but they do meet with parents when needed. So I don't think it's both middle school and the elementary in October. And in March, it's just the elementary.
So the teachers at those schools still have a full day. So what do they do at Fitch?
Well, you can go in and meet with the teachers. It's just,
Well, like this year, I just noticed personally that we never got any note, because in past years, we've had parent teacher conferences at Fitch, and this year I noticed that we didn't get it.
Oh, you had?
I couldn't remember. I asked my wife. and
Oh.
she said she didn't.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know if
about
I'm
that.
telling anything with that.
Matt.
But what happened? So do those teachers still work a full day and have PD or something, or what happens on those days?
Yeah, the early release would just be for the elementary. They do something, I think, around PSAT where they get a shorter day, so they get their 3 days somewhere else, but where it's appropriate for the kids needed to, go home early.
Yeah.
So,
All right, I was just wondering, mostly because.
but I'm gonna ask Mac Brown. He'll tell me the answer.
I don't know who was first. We got Dean and we got Beverly.
Kevin's up first.
Okay, Beverly.
Oh, yes, I'd like to have an answer to that question too, Susan, about what the high school
Absolutely.
teachers do.
Yeah.
I would suggest also to have 2 full weeks off in December and just go longer in June. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think that's doable. Dean.
Still think a day, an extra day early in August and a day later in June, just to cover ourselves. The question that I have is, just out of curiosity, how many early dismissal days can you have in a calendar? Because they count as full days, they count toward your 180. How many are you allowed to have?
They don't tell you that.
I'll tell you, so we could have like.
All of them.
Yeah.
But I don't think it helped my scores at all.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just wondering. If there's a limit to how many-
No, they don't. I mean,
Because there are 15 of them on the calendar that I
Yeah.
count, so.
Yeah.
That's not quite 10% of the day, not full days.
All right. Well, this gives us something to think about.
yeah, something to chew on.
Can I ask one quick question? Susan, is it possible, like in October, you have 4 early dismissal days. Is it possible to cut down on one? I don't know what the TLI, it must be teacher learning something.
Beverly,
to have
not
that-
this year. We have got our hands full. Every TLI day is being used for wit and wisdom, and every PD day. Our teachers need that level of support for a brand new program, and it's across the district. There's one thing or the other that is needed. I don't know if you remember. I guess there used to be every Tuesday, Fitch used to early dismiss, and board was not happy with that. And that was for department meetings because the departments never had a chance to meet. So these TLI days, 4 of them at least are for departments to meet, and the departments often meet 6 through 12. So they are absolutely essential to our professional learning. So
Okay.
it comes back in tenfold for our kids when they get together and they plan. So
Okay, understood.
thank you.
All right. Very good. If there are no other questions about the calendar, I think I'll recognize Andrea.
Well, I've sat here and I've just listened all evening and I haven't said anything. And I've listened very carefully to all of our colleagues, but in particular Beverly put forth my views. And so I would like to defer to Beverly to move to adjourn.
Oh, my
Well-
goodness.
Well, I am on it, Andrea. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Only
night.
you
I'll send it to
can-
George.
Here, second.
Oh, I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Thank you.
Bye.
We're
Have a
adjourned.
good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.